Now that Kent's here, we'll get started. Welcome to the committee of the whole meeting for whatever day this is, January 17th, 2024. We have all members of the council or committee, as it may be, present and staff. And this is for those of you who have it's your first one. This is a rather informal discussion. There won't be any wait in line on the mic or anything like that. All the mics will be hot, so just jump on in and discuss when you feel the need. And we'll hopefully make some progress on a couple items tonight. And the first one up for bid is Cottages at Parker Place. And we're in review. Ellen, do you want to set the stage for us?
Yeah, if I can set the stage, back on December 20th, the city council postponed this for no later than 120 days, which is April, to deal with a couple of concerns related to parking, setbacks, and those kind of things. So that has been worked on since that meeting with the developer and community development. So I have Mr. Forsyth here and Mr. Murray from legal to answer questions. There's a brief presentation to address those items that the council provided direction on at that meeting on the 20th. So if it's okay, Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Forsyth.
All right, thank you. So just kind of a quick recap. Really the purpose of the discussion here tonight is really kind of the 4 items that were brought up in the December 20th meeting. And so really we just want to kind of get some direction on some of these. So especially the first 2. So the first one is just kind of related to the building setbacks and the status of the variance. So just to kind of give a quick recap. That the subdivision received a variance for building setbacks and reducing those based on the lot size. And so anyway, a year went past and essentially there weren't any building permits issued until after a 12-month period, which basically expired. So so some of the discussion tonight is really to kind of twofold. One, to kind of look into the status of that variance, see if that can get extended, and then maybe, or if it can't, just kind of discuss some options that we could do in lieu of, just to kind of get to the setbacks that would work for the developer and work for the city. And then the second item is more related to on-street parking and some of the concerns brought up, particularly from some of the council members and from the Drake family farm. So we've got a couple of ideas that we could look into as far as parking on Drake Lane goes. And then the last 2, 3, and 4 is really just more informational items and just kind of clearing up some of those questions. So with that, I have more slides than this, but I'd kind of like to bring those up if you need, just to leave some time for good discussion. So.
Excellent. Well, let's have some good discussion.
Variance. My understanding in looking through this development plan, we're not in trying to pursue the variance. We've got setbacks that the developer has agreed to. I don't want to have any discussion about a potential variance. I think the developer has put in here the setbacks. I'm looking at about page 6 of their development plan, and they talk specifically on the five lots that are remaining, that they'll have minimum front yard setbacks of 20, minimum side yards of 5, and minimum rear setbacks of 13. I know Mr. Clark and I talked about 20 to 22, and 13 to 15, but I think if we do the minimum of 13 and, you know, whatever the resident wants, if they want a little bit bigger backyard or a little bit bigger front yard, I don't care. I think that doesn't that eliminate the variance? Why would we talk about variance again?
So the issue here is so you can kind of see here on this graph here, just kind of the setbacks side by side. But the city code setbacks are pretty strict. They're pretty similar to what we have in a lot of the other R1 zones. And then you've got the setbacks that were approved by the variance, which are a lot less. And so what the developer is proposing is something more kind of in the middle. So I think the question we're really trying to get more direction on is how are these setbacks appropriate and how do we get there to approving them?
Okay, so first, and I'll say this, and I think that's why we're having some discussions in the future on how to deal with this. This development can never conform to R38. Cannot. It's impossible. If you look at the city code, it can't. It's going to be a non-conforming neighborhood. And so one of the things that I'm going to point out up front is one of the things that when we pass, if we pass the ordinance that changes this, one of the attachments to the ordinance needs to be very specific about the non-conforming nature of this neighborhood, that it's not going to conform, so that in future nobody has any questions about this neighborhood being non-conforming and which lots are non-conforming based on these setbacks and the other 6 or 7 homes are non-conforming based on the variance that they were granted. So I think what we've got to do is recognize that if we're going to approve this neighborhood, that it's never going to conform, and that left column is never going to work. It just can't, unless we say bag it, and then they have to redo the subdivision and resurvey and all that other stuff. It's just not going to work. So I'm good with the proposed development plan. I really don't like the fact that the variance was granted. I'll tell you, I'm furious that the variance was granted. We've had some discussions about that variance, and we need to make steps to ensure that something like that never happens again. And we'll use this as a learning tool to teach us that if we're going to do things like senior housing overlays and somehow require single stories, that we're not going to allow 14 lots that don't work. And then somebody comes back and this isn't Liberty's fault. This goes back to the original. This goes back to the original developer and the Sage Homes and unfortunately Liberty got stuck with this, literally got stuck with this the way it worked. And we've got to, we as the council in this particular process have to look at how we fix this in the future, that when we're doing senior housing overlays and we're doing things, we have to do a better job of getting the lot size right and knowing what's going on the lot and the right and those kind of things. And I that didn't happen here. So I'm okay with that. We just have to understand that the variance on was it 6 lots? The variance on the 6 lots Well, there's five plus, there's five, well, there's two that are got,
There's 7.
there's actually 7 because of the 5 plus the two that got the foundations done, right? Those, we've got a crappy setback that we have to deal with the parking issue. And the others, I think we've got about as close as we can get to have a decent setback that will meet as close to the city standards on, and like in a PRD or some other type, other type neighborhood that we're close. And so I think we'll get there.
I just wanted to kind of, talk about, the variances and the setbacks and just kind of remind us that, there's 3 of us who are on the council right now that were here when this was approved. And it went through city staff, it went through planning commission, it went through us as the city council. And, obviously it was approved for a reason and it worked, but it wasn't conducive with the environment that happened 2 years later. So I don't want to say we did this wrong, because I don't think that we did it wrong. And I think that we did it right the first time. It's just, it didn't work out with the senior overlay and with what they need to do currently. And this is where I kind of want to say, we have guidelines, we have city code, we need to follow them, but sometimes we need to be a little bit flexible. And I think this is what we're doing right now, is we as a city council, we're being flexible and saying, this didn't work for the senior overlay. This didn't work for what Liberty needs now to sell these homes. And I'm good with it. And I know Kelvin and I, we've been back and forth on, the setbacks, and I think we both agree that the setbacks are going to work. When I look at this, the layout of this, those lots that we're talking about with the setbacks, it really does not affect the people on the main street. It just affects those people that buy those homes in each one of those, in those streets. And so that's why I'm not too concerned about it, because it's not a thoroughfare. They're just 2 dead end streets with these setbacks. And, these neighbors are probably going to complain to each other once in a while when they move in, which happens. But it is an HOA, and, with an HOA, they'll make decisions on their own. And it's, hopefully it's not something that comes back to the city again. But yeah, I like what has been done here. And yes, I'm glad that, a month ago you guys said, hey, let's look at this one more time. Let's make it better. And this is better than what we had before.
So we did our job. A variance was granted after it came before us. So just want that out there. That variance came after the council had said yes to a senior housing overlay. I also want to say that when I go and buy something, I am responsible for what I buy as well. So I think Liberty does have some of it is their own issue. You should know what you're buying when you buy it. And you bought a senior housing overlay. That being said, I somewhat agree with Councilmember Lamb that we do need to work with them. The only way I will say yes is if we have, I think it's B in my packet, the parking. We must have no parking on Drake Lane. That just isn't fair to the existing residents that I understand that at times they may have been a little bit testy, but overall I feel they were good to work with. And it is a high impact, not only on their lives, but on their livelihood. And it's not just the Drakes, it's also another family that owns a business that this is their access. And it wasn't Liberty that caused many of the issues for them. And Liberty has made it much better for them. And I personally want to thank Liberty for doing some of the things that you did for the existing residents. But I definitely, it needs to be no parking on either side. And somehow as a city, we need to ensure this never happens again. And I don't want to see more people coming in here saying senior housing isn't working, because I won't. I didn't on the last one. I may on this one, but I will not vote again to take senior housing overlay off. Because every time a developer came to this council, I would say, are you sure we need that many? Because I usually look at myself, and actually our PIO told me this once. She said, you're just the average resident of West Jordan, Kayleen. That's what you are. And I feel that I am. I feel that's an accurate description. I don't know why I would sell my home to move into something smaller, more restrictive, and more expensive. So that's why I kept asking, are you sure that there's that many people that want senior housing overlay? And over and over, every one of the developers say, yep, yep, yep. And now we have developers coming back and saying, oops, we were wrong, but we want to keep the density. And that just doesn't seem just to the current residents of this city, that you get something that you got because you had a senior housing overlay and now you no longer want it. I, I would have preferred that we worked on this a little differently. I would encourage all developers in the future not to meet one-on-one with council members and change your design based on one council member's choice, because we come and go. And that council member's actually gone. So my choice wouldn't have been a tot lot with parking stalls. My choice would have been figure out more parking overall. And I really need to know, Mr. Forsyth, how that retention basin is being handled, because that's a biggie for me. So I'm sad that that was the last in yours, because to me, parking and retention basin are really, really important. That that it's owned by a different entity, that's really problematic for me. I need this HOA to own that, because otherwise that could end up an eyesore. And who's going to take care of that? And then the city is going to get called, because if I live right there and I'm looking out there and it's a big mess, I'm not going to be happy. And then it's going to be a not I game. And that's not fair to the people that Liberty are going to sell these homes to. So that needs to be resolved in my mind. That's where I'm at with this. I don't know how in the end I'll vote, but it's an unfortunate, and I feel for Liberty, but I also want to say these are not going to help with our affordable housing in this state. They're just not.
So can I go? On the discussion of the setbacks, in looking at this, I feel like I'm in favor of smaller backyards if we can make sure that those driveways are a good 20 feet, maybe 22 feet. 22 is the goal, but I'm in favor of a smaller setback in that backyard in order to allow for some more parking in front yards. And I know we can't do that, unfortunately, obviously, for the homes that are already built in this development, but for those new homes, and then I feel like I agree with Kayleen on the Drake Lane parking. I'd really like to just not have any at all. And I know that's not fun or enjoyable for the residents who are buying those homes. They want a place for their guests to park other than a driveway. You know, if there's an extended family gathering, it's going to get tight and maybe sometimes difficult for people to park. But when it comes to make, a livelihood of the Drake farm and that family there, that they need to have full access. I went and spoke with a farmhand at Drake Farm, and he said that was his main concern. I know he's not a member of the Drake family, but he's there working every day, and he said that they need to bring semi trucks in and out of there. They have huge horse trailers that come in and out, and so having parking on Drake Lane could be very problematic. I'm imagining an 18-wheeler trying to drive up and down that street. That's a problem if there's people parked in there. So those are my only issues, and I feel like we should work with the developer. It's sat here for 5 years now, that since the first home was put up for sale. Only 2 years. Thank you. So I don't feel like we should be making developers' financial problems our problems, but at the same time, we need to work with developers and help them get through a sticky spot for the good of the city. And so I'm in favor of moving this forward.
Let me jump in here. with one thing. If I understand this, Mark, this is where you understand this better than I do, but if I understand this, if you look at the recorded plat, I think this addresses your question, Councilmember Whitelock. The recorded plat, on the recorded plat, if you'll notice, it's got a 65-foot storm drain easement in favor of the city. That's the detention pond. So it's already been recorded. So Gary owns it. Gary Cannon owns it, but the detention pond has been recorded. So that alleviated my concern. Yeah, who's going to maintain it? Well, the current property owner is going to have to maintain it. That's his.
He's not gonna maintain that.
Well, he owns that and the other half acre, and he has to maintain it. And I think there's a guy right there that can make them maintain it if they need to, which is a discussion for later on about how much we want to fine them for it. So I think the detention pond is covered. I'm okay with the no parking on both sides of the street. I like that, but I can live with either one. The only thing that I don't see in this development plan and we haven't seen the actual draft ordinance, right, that we're gonna pass. The only thing that
The draft ordinances are attached.
Or are they?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I missed it. Okay, so I missed that in the packet. The only thing that I don't see that I think we probably ought to include as typical as part of any other master development agreement is on that tot lot and parking. I think that what we need to put in there is that, or Liberty can put it in their master development plan. I don't care which way we do it. Is an agreement that will be recorded in perpetuity as a tot lot and a parking lot, so that 2 years from now, isn't that what we typically do, Duncan? On most master development agreements for the open space type things, is that we have something that it's recorded as in perpetuity, so that 5 years from now, somebody that owns the neighborhood can't go and say, oh, I'm gonna make the tot lot and tear it down and put another house in. I think we need the in perpetuity clause.
Yeah, where we don't have an MDA, we can just add that in the ordinance, which will get recorded at the county recorder's office with the development plan.
On this, I too am in favor of the no parking on Drake Lane. I think that while that is a hindrance, I think that with the variances that have been allowed, we've also made it something where Liberty now has a better chance to sell the homes, but we make sure that it's very strong on that no parking and that everything else is put into place. That will hinder their ability to sell easier, but it certainly, they certainly have a better chance than they would have without lifting the restrictions. So I'm in favor of that, in just in that tone of we're stuck now with a bad egg. And unless we leveled everything and started over again, which doesn't help anybody either, I think this is probably our best chance here. Again, we've hindered them a bit in that it will be harder to sell, especially those homes right there on Drake Lane that we're saying no parking. And I think that does need to be enforced completely, but it does give them a better chance. I don't think that this division was ever going to bode well for senior housing. There's nothing really around it that would have helped senior housing at any point. This was never looking to me like it was ever going to be anything remotely senior housing. So I just wanted to make sure that it was aware that my vote is for no parking at all on Drake Lane.
Duncan, and this is for Liberty to listen to as well, because when they first came, we told them that it needed to have in their, I think in their CCRs for their HOA, or when they sign their documents, that they know they're buying near a farm and that they agree to that and that they know there will be smells and noises. And I know, but I need to ensure that it's in the documents. In the end, when I'm looking for final, I need to know that that's there. Okay, well, I didn't see it in mine, so I just need to know, I need to see it. So,
Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure it's in there.
Can I just ask a couple of questions? On Drake Lane, is that the same width of a road? That's gonna be a public road, right? That'll be a West Jordan maintained.
Yes, it is a public road.
And that's not changing. That's not going to a private road or an HOA maintained road or anything like
No.
that. What is the width of it compared to other public roads that are residential streets?
So it's exactly the same, really. The only difference is on the south side, there's no park strip and no sidewalk, at least in front of Majestic Elementary.
Right. For the
But as far as
western
curb to
half.
curb width, it's exactly the same 29 standard.
Okay. So what are the concerns? I mean, I've heard somebody say semi trucks. What are the concerns with having a car parked there? You had a graphic I saw flash by that had had little silhouettes of cars on it. What are the concerns with having parking allowed on one side of the street? And then I'll mention why I bring it up.
So the idea was really kind of the option either on the south side, just because the north side really wasn't practical. There's in between that Pearson Park Court and Drake Park Court. You can't see it on here, but there's actually a fire hydrant between those two homes. So the fire department doesn't want any parking anywhere near that.
Which is already the law, right? I mean, you can't park in front of a fire hydrant. We all know
Right.
that. Okay.
And then the house is in red. Just with those driveways being so close together, it makes it kind of difficult. I mean, you can maybe fit one compact car there, but
But
probably not a great
As
idea.
far as the width of the road goes, though, and getting whatever vehicle needs to go on that road in and out of that road, I mean, RC Willie delivers furniture in semi trucks all the time in residential homes all over the state, right? I mean, residential streets and everywhere that are narrower than regular size roads. Is it ideal? No, but do they do it? Yes. If a driver hits another car that's parked on the side of the road, is that the driver's fault? Yes. I mean, these are things that are already addressed, right? If it's a standard size road and it's a standard size vehicles going up and down that road, why does this road need to be different than every other road in the city? I wanted to mention that. And then the other thing I wanted to say is, let's assume somebody buys this house who's maybe edging on being able to be a senior housing purchaser, but who isn't, who's maybe my age or so, and who has teenagers who drive cars. We say no parking here. They buy this house. Maybe they buy it when their kids are little and they still live there when they're teenagers. They buy a couple extra cars. There's 7 off-street parking places total, right? Let's assume the garages are full of crap and everybody's parking on the driveway, just because that's what happens. Where are they going to park? They're going to live there. There are going to be cars, or somebody has a birthday party. Where are they going to park? They're going to park somewhere. We say no parking on the street, and we have meter maid go up and down the street and be ticketing cars that are parked there because of somebody's birthday party. Where are they going to park? They're going to park at an animal hospital that's to the south? Is that what it is? It's
they would have this,
the electrical apprenticeship thing.
or they do have the 7 off-street parking spaces next to the park.
7 for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 homes. So for those that drive half a car, they can share. So I'm just saying, what's the practical implication of this? Because people are going to drive cars. People are going to come visit on Christmas Eve or whatever, on Thanksgiving, and you're going to park cars somewhere. Where are they going to park them? They are going to park cars. There's going to be cars. This is real life, right? Where are we going to put them?
for me, that isn't the issue before me. Yes, I agree, Councilmember Jacob, you're right. Where are they going to put them? But that isn't my problem. For me, It's the Drakes and the people down that lane have lived there before. We're impacting them. We had agreed upon one thing, which they had agreed upon as well, and now we're changing it. So it's a concession that's being made because we are also making concessions. So for me, this isn't the same. This is different because what's being allowed is different than what is currently allowed. What we're being asked to do is to allow something that anywhere else in the city wouldn't be allowed. So
But
yeah, it's the
that
same
was-
size street and I don't know where they'll park and that isn't my problem right now. My problem is to decide, do I take senior housing overlay off or not? But I would suggest that Majestic Elementary is right there, the electrical place is right there. There are several places within walking distance that they'll be creative and they can choose to not use their garages as storage units and use their garage as a parking place. For me, my vote will be no if we do not have parking on, if we allow parking on Drake Lane, my vote will have to be no for those reasons.
So let me jump in here. There are, right now, what we've got, if you look at the houses that are the the two houses on Pearson Park Court and the two yellow houses at the end of Drake Park Court, those actually have driveways that are longer than 20 feet because the 20-foot setback is from the front of the garage east and west to the edge of the property line, not from the street up to the garage and turn. So those driveways are actually bigger. And so we have to keep that in mind, that those driveways are probably as close to real driveways. I'm going to say real driveways, as close to real driveways as they possibly are. That the other one on Pearson Park Court's pretty close. The one on Drake Lane is going to have a 20-foot, have a 20-foot driveway. And so some of these, and we're not banning the parking, anything on Pearson Park Court or on Drake Park. So, are we?
They would have
Yes, there are no parking signs all along those
Oh,
private
okay, I did
drives,
not know
both
that.
sides.
So, I mean, I'm okay if people park on Drake Park Court and Pearson Park Court. I don't care. They are a private street.
If somebody parks on a private street, who enforces that?
So,
The city's gonna go up there and say, we're not writing a ticket, that's a private street.
so
So guess where they're gonna park on Thanksgiving?
So I'm okay if they park. I'm actually okay if they park on the two private streets. I don't care. Because that's an HOA issue. That's an issue that the neighbors can work out amongst themselves. I don't care. So that's okay by me. I agree with, I mean, I'm okay if, what I want to ensure is that there is no detriment to, the Drakes or the other property. I want to make sure that the trucks can run through there freely without having to dodge a bunch of trucks and or dodge a bunch of cars and slow down. I mean, they got to slow down. It's a residential street. They got to do 25, but you know what I mean, is that they shouldn't have to bob and weave there. So I understand where you're coming from, but this whole neighborhood is going to be completely non-conforming. And I think that what we have to do is help. What we're trying to do is come up with a compromise that we can say the Drakes are not impacted, and we're allowing Liberty to sell and to finish building out the neighborhood. We're allowing both things to occur, and we have to have a balance. And I think the balance part of that is the setbacks and the no parking. And the no parking on the north side of the street's no brainer. You can't park there anyway. And there's already no parking from Redwood Road to the first house on Drake Lane. So the north side of Drake Lane with no parking, that's just common sense. You ain't gonna park there anyway because the houses and the setbacks and
Too
everything.
close together.
They're
You'd be
too-
able to fit a car.
You're not gonna
Unless
fit
you're
a car.
driving a mini or one of those
Yeah,
smart cars.
you gotta get one of the little smart cars to
Sonic.
fit. And
Scion
you know, that the smart car wouldn't even fit between the blue house and the yellow over there where no, I think that, so the north side is easy. The south side,
The thing is,
I-
20 feet is 2.5 semi trucks wide. A semi truck is 8 feet wide. No. They can't be wider than 8 feet or they have to have an oversized load. 8 feet is 96 inches is as wide as you can get. And with a car parked there, you got 20 feet between the car and the curb.
But when you have cars parked there, you also have pedestrians and you have children. It adds,
You're
it,
still
it
gonna have
is an add.
pedestrians and children.
Not running across the road if you don't have cars parked there.
Could I throw a question out? Just brainstorming here. I've seen neighborhoods where you can have no parking allowed during certain hours. Could that be beneficial to the Drakes? I mean, maybe they're not concerned about if people park on that road, say after 7 PM or something. Is that a compromise we could make?
I'd be in favor of that. I think that's a good, you know, parking only between like 7 PM and 6 AM or something like that. 7 to 7. I don't know how early some of the semis come.
Something like that works, then yeah. Also, one thing we need to keep in mind, many of those homes being put in are 3-car garages. And as I believe the HOA states that your garage must be usable for parking
Is that in the HOA in this one?
Two.
for 2.
Okay.
So there is, I mean, unless you're doing a car lot, you don't need, that many cars to be putting in there. So I wanted to make sure that we were aware of that the HOA does state about the garage. I know my garage is nowhere near car friendly, but I did not sign an HOA stating that it would be, so I packed that thing with all the crap I can put in. But
It's cheaper than a storage unit,
it
right?
certainly is, but I think that that's something, like I said, we are giving Liberty, some leeway in what we're doing to allow them to have a better chance at selling. But there is something that needs to be in place. I think when this was put in senior housing, I believe at the time it was kind of with the idea that they won't have cars much anyway. There won't be driving, there won't be this. But now, the way you make it sound, we're going to have 50 cars every weekend there, which is not what the Drake signed up for. So that's what I think what Councilmember Whitelock is trying to really say, that we made a promise at one point. We're not keeping many of our promises with this land, but we can keep some of them. But I think that the idea of maybe some time things might work, but that would have to be something that would be worked out with Drake Farm, because as a farm, they might be bringing stuff in at, farmers' hours. So that's something that we would need to work with them on.
Yeah, well, I think with any public road, with any residential street, you're gonna occasionally have semi trucks that drive down them. I mean, I know there's private roads, or not private roads, residential roads up in the very west side of the city, and I know some guy that lives up there has a he's a semi truck driver. He parks his cab in his RV parking. He parks his truck up there in his RV parking when he's not on the road. It caught fire a few years ago. I don't know if anybody remembers that. Caught fire and damaged the house. And anyway, another story. But yeah, you're got plenty of room with one row of cars. You still got plenty of room for anything to drive by. You wouldn't be allowed to park there in the wintertime if there's snow. Anyway, that's already a city ordinance, right?
And everybody obeys that.
Well, a no parking sign's a no parking sign.
Just to point out that, your person, with a semi is in an area that's been okayed.
Yeah.
This is something different. You can't compare the two when one has been okayed
Well,
and one,
what I'm comparing is the width of the road, which
Yeah.
is the same. A 29-foot road is.
but it's what's on the other end of the road and what we're trying to protect. If that road just went to nowhere, went out to,
Right.
whatever 2200 west, that would be something
Right,
different.
but again, why? What is, if we originally had approved this and said all the houses will be blue, and the developer came in and said, we can't sell blue houses, we want to make them yellow. And well, we told the Drakes they would be blue.
Again, that's different than roads.
No,
I mean, you're making an argument
No,
that doesn't
I
make
know,
sense.
I'm trying to
Not make
demonstrate
sense.
why it's, exactly, I'm trying to demonstrate why it doesn't make sense, because
But at the end of the day,
a road width is a road width is a road width.
at the end of the day, one of the compromises to do this is to ensure that the Drakes have proper access.
Yeah.
So the proposal, obviously to us, one of those proposals is not to allow parking on both sides of the street 24 hours a day. We have been presented two options. North side of the street, no parking, both sides of the street, no parking. I've heard at least two council, and I don't disagree with Council Member Shelton that maybe there's a possibility that what we do is we say no parking between, 7 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't have a problem with that. And that's because the no parking signs can handle the hours. But at the end of the day, we've been presented two options, and I think the idea is that as we get ready for this meeting, for the potential meeting for next week, that I think that we want this on the agenda, that people want this on the agenda for next week. We get to pick one of two options. And so having the argument about, well, we should just allow parking on the street altogether wasn't one of the options we were presented. Now we can talk about that, but I think you've heard multiple council members say that's not an option to us.
Well, I think on the north side, I think what has generally been said makes sense. There's not really a place to park a car on the north side anyway and be legal, right? Unless you're blocking somebody's driveway or whatever. I'm just saying that access to the farm is not hindered by having 20 feet of right of way versus 29 feet of right of way. Unless they're driving combines down that road, and it's a farm, maybe they are. There's not a difference. I'm saying you're hindering a development here for 9 feet of right of way. That's a third of the width of the road. I don't think. I think you can get a semi truck down a 20-foot road just as easily as a 29-foot road. And we do it all over the city all the time. And that's why I'm mentioning other places in the cities, because it happens.
You're
And Marcy
absolutely
Miller
right that
delivers on
sometimes big
so
trucks
the
come down
trucks
our
come in.
residential streets. But what we heard the Drakes come and say is we are concerned with cars parking there with us bringing our equipment and stuff in. So you can keep telling me that it's ridiculous, but I'm telling you that if I'm going to give a concession, that's a concession I need back. However, there's a way for them to provide more parking. If your concern, Councilmember Jacob, is that there's not enough parking for this development, I 100% agree. But there's a way for them to provide that. Gary Cannon owns a half an acre right there. Put up a parking lot. They could buy it and put up a parking lot. I'm fine with that.
Abe Paris. I love this.
I think we can also look at maybe, again, looking back at the farms, that this is something that needs to be worked out with the Drakes. Maybe the weekend is not a time that they need to worry about that. So maybe parking could be on the south side on the weekend. So there are things we can look at, but as, and Councilmember Shelton brought up the idea of the timing, but to go with what Councilmember Green said, we were given two options, and I'm merely stating the option that I prefer of the two options I was given.
Well, and all I'm just trying to argue that a perceived what might make it more difficult when it doesn't actually exist is often different than what reality is. And I'm just saying, in reality, a 20-foot right of way is plenty of room to get anything that's legal to drive on a residential street up and down a residential street. That's all I'm saying, is that this should not be a concern. Flip back over to the slide with the signs on it, by the way. If you do, wait,
Did you want option 1 or option 2?
the other one, the one with no parking on the road at all.
Oh, okay, there you
If we
go.
are gonna go with no parking on the road, can we make this first one, the first one on the south side from Redwood? Why do you have to have two signs on two poles with arrows going this way and you can't park in between them? Can we
Sorry,
just put
no,
one
that was
sign?
my fault. Just
Can you just put one sign with an arrow that goes both
the
ways?
real design will be much better.
I was looking at that going, that looks like government work, if I ever saw it.
Yes, it was.
I'm just saying, I don't see the need to restrict these people who are gonna buy these homes, and I'm not talking about the developer. The developer doesn't care where the people who buy the homes park their cars. The people who buy them are gonna have people come over, and I just would like them not to have to walk a quarter mile or a half a mile to get to their friend's house. Park across the street, walk across. It's not that big of a deal. I'm fine with the north side. It's got its issues. Parking doesn't work there anyway. Go ahead and throw the signs up because you couldn't park there anyway. Fire hydrants, driveways, whatever. Go ahead and throw the signs up. Doesn't make any difference, right? You'd have gotten a ticket even if there weren't signs.
But
on
again,
the-
let's
on
talk
the
to the
south side, I
Drakes.
don't think it makes
Let's
sense.
talk to the Drakes and see what, if there are times that work for them or maybe the weekends, things like that.
That's absolutely fine. Let's also ask them what the widest thing is that drives down the road is. Because again, if it's wider than 20 feet,
But one thing I'm
Zach,
pointing
what I
out-
thi- Councilmember Jacob, what I think you've heard is that for support of this particular project, if you're proposing just not having any parking, the project will fail. That the ordinance lifting the senior housing overlay will fail. And so the question is not whether or not the semi can go down the road or whether this is the same as any other city street. The question is to get the concessions that Liberty needs. What's one of the concessions to help guarantee access to the Drake Farm and the other property? And that is to guarantee some no parking. And so I think you've heard at least three of us say we want no parking. I think you hear, we probably ought to just take a poll and not belabor the point and take a poll to say which option do we want. And that's the option that gets included in the packet next week, because and if we want to talk to the Drakes to say, and we make that a contingent that we will look at hours of parking, I'm okay with that, night and weekends or whatever works. But the fact of the matter is people want to guarantee some votes on this. If we don't do a no parking option, this will go nowhere. You'll get a bunch of no votes. And if we're trying to compromise, then one of the compromises is to put no parking on the street.
I will admit that Councilmember Jacobs' arguments have had some weight. I just looked up on my smartphone, how wide is a semi truck? It says 8.5 feet on my phone. And so, I mean, there's a valid argument there in my mind, but I also spoke with the Drakes or at least the farmhand, nicest guy ever. They're really concerned about that parking on that road. And I don't know the numbers when you add them up. Yeah, there's still 20 feet of an 8.5 foot wide semi truck to be able to get through there. And there's really not going to be a lot of two-way traffic. I'm not imagining a lot of two-way traffic on that road. So now I'm a little bit waffling, but boy, I know for sure that the Drakes are adamant about the no parking. So, and I there's got to be some respect for them and their wishes in this decision.
And I too agree that Chair Jacob has, made a great point about that. But the point is, not everybody parks right up against the side, and you get some of those people that have the trucks with the wide thing, and if they're even a foot out, all of a sudden your free space is kind of gone. And so then we have to start making sure that everyone is parking up against it. It's just, to me, it's a place that has been more of a work road than a public road. And we're looking to turn that into a public road. And that's my concern. That's why if we can find the times that it needs to be a work road and say, don't park there during the work road hours. And then the Drakes have to be cognizant of that and make sure none of our, driving or deliveries or anything down there are going to be during these hours. And we can find a way. Because again, I want this to work for Liberty Homes, but I also need it to work for the people who were already there and who are concerned. I've gone down and looked at it as well. And, and even if you look at the drawings there, it's pretty much that south side is the road. So we would have to probably at the very least put a lot of no parking in that last half of Drake Lane to make sure that someone's not parked right on the end there. And now a truck has a hard time getting in there, just looking at basic pictures. So that's my point. I mean, Chair Jacob, you obviously have a very valid point. People drive on those side of roads all the time, but it's not set up to be a constant work road. It's really residential, and those trucks have to be careful when they go down. And that's what I want to set up. I don't want to be a lot of trucks. I don't want someone parking a foot and a half away because they didn't want to step in a puddle because there is no real ledge there or no sidewalk or anything like that. So people are generally probably going to park a little bit further away. And then suddenly that road becomes a little more hazardous for a truck to go down. So that's my only concern there. It wasn't designed or set up originally to be anything other than really a work road. And we tried to make it into something for senior housing with the idea that there would be very few cars. And now by your own admission, you're saying there's going to be a lot of cars. And that's what we have to work through. And I think the folks at Liberty Homes are going to have a bit of an uphill battle already to say, this is what you're buying. Whereas, as Councilmember Whitelock said, you know what you bought. And that's what these homeowners are going to have to know what they're buying.
I know in my HOA, there's no street parking allowed, but there's a whole lot of street parking that happens. It happens. And if it's gonna be HOA patrolled, especially when it's on private roads like my house is, it's gonna happen.
Well, the private roads are the court and the
Yeah.
Pearson.
So is the consensus this option or go to the other one, Alan?
We take a poll.
So is the consensus option one or option two?
Which one is this? Oh, option 2, I see it.
So option two is no parking at all. Option one is limited parking.
Okay, if you like option 1, raise your hand. Option 1, no parking at all.
No,
Oh, no,
option-
I'm sorry.
Option one is limited.
Option 1, parking on south side only. That's my vote. Okay, option 2 is no parking at all.
Actually, I want an
That's
option
got
3.
3, 4.
Can
there
we
you go.
look at an option? Can we see if an option
And,
3 can
and
be presented?
sure, yeah, I would love an option 3.
That's what I would love. Yeah.
I would like that too, so. That's option 4.
Yeah, and we're not necessarily limited to just these two options. These are just
The two
examples
out
of
on
what
the
we
table
came
so
up
far.
with. So
Okay,
feel free to change these. as
Well,
you go.
and I think where Councilmember Bador's going with this is option 3 is the no parking on
time
both
restricted.
sides with a time restriction. Is
Right.
that-
And that's what Councilmember Shelton brought up. But I think that if we can talk to them, find out some times, and maybe, like I said, if weekends work, then that might be something and then people can just have their birthday parties on weekends.
right,
And-
and Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Thanksgiving on a weekend. We can make that happen.
Chair, if I
Yeah.
may, so is the third option, just to clarify with the council, a potential third option is no parking both sides during certain hours after we communicate with the Drakes?
Well, I think there's gonna be no
Or-
parking on the north side in any case, just because it doesn't work.
Okay,
we're
so-
talking south side only
South side is parking
during
during
restricted times.
restricted times after checking with the Drakes. Is that the option 3?
That's what
the-
we'd like,
the
that's what
maj-
we'd like to see as an option 3, and then we
consensus?
can, yeah,
Is there a consensus of council members for that?
yeah.
Okay,
The only thing is we haven't determined which option 3 is. When is the no parking?
Well, that's what they've gotta have.
oh,
a
we have
discussion.
to ask the Drakes to find out when they have the need. And
Well, it
then-
seems like if semi trucks are coming, it's not going to be after 7 and during the middle of the
Right,
night.
that-
Oh, right,
that's
So
what
the
I'm asking,
consensus is
right?
probably going to be during the daytime.
Right, yeah,
Similar to, let's say similar to if you have the Bees ballpark, it says during these times you cannot park here.
right, yeah, no, West Temple, when you get
Right,
off the freeway.
But we don't have that until we communicate with
Third
the
level,
Drakes when the
yeah.
need is, and then we can bring that back as an option 3 to the council for consideration.
Turn Mike.
Yeah, I think they can make a consensus as well if they can decide we really don't need it on the weekends. Or maybe they can set a thing to say, we do have a delivery coming this Saturday. Make sure the people in that area all know it. It's going to be around this time. that they can be alerted.
Sure, it'd be nice if people could work together like that,
Yeah, well, that's what we're trying to do
right?
here.
And,
But,
and if the Drakes only need access on the weekends.
No,
is
or if
that-
they don't, or if they only
Well,
need it on the
right, yeah,
weekends,
if
then
they only
that's
do it
what
on
we tell them,
weekends,
no
then you're-
parking on the weekends.
Right.
Hey.
So we try to make it so that it's something that can be, fair to both sides, I think
Yeah,
is
I-
what we're trying to do.
And you know what? I like that as a compromise.
Yeah.
I really do think that the objection is, which you'll hear this all the time. We hear this all the time. Objections from current neighbors based on what they think
Right,
a new development is going to do to X, Y, or Z.
Yep.
Property value, whatever, right? And in reality, those come to pass 10% of the time, right? I mean, most of the time, fears don't become reality.
and that could be a thing down the line, they come to us and say, we've all worked, this is gonna work, and we have the signs taken down, and then they can come down to us and.
Yeah, and
And we could
that's what they did
say
in my neighborhood.
Chair
They took
Jacob
out-
was right
took
all
away
along.
Well, if we do that, I want to rename the street. No.
Oh,
I had one other question before we move on from this, and this is for Duncan mostly. I want to just ask about the process. There's been some questions on if processes were appropriately followed on this as far as variances versus development plans versus setbacks or, whatever. In officially employed lawyer by the city, in your opinion, if we followed processes appropriately?
I'll phrase it this way, wasn't an optimal situation, obviously.
You're so politically correct.
The part of the process I think that's problematic was the Board of Adjustment variance, which is outside of your purview. I think at this juncture, based upon the past history, I think the process that we're following now does create a good legally justifiable solution. So I think under the situation, the hand that we've been dealt up to this point, moving forward, is this the best legal process, or at least one of the best options? Yes, would be my answer.
And the reason I ask is I don't want to set a precedent, right? That says, hey, you did everything wrong, yet we still approved your project. You know what I mean? And then we now have somebody who can come to the council in a future time and says, well, I'm going to do everything wrong too, because you approved it for that guy. Now you got to approve it for me too. So I just want to make sure that we got all our ducks in a row and
Yeah, I don't believe it creates any dangerous precedent, but what I do believe is we've learned a lot from the process to prevent or minimize the potential for some event like this to happen again in the future.
right. And even when we do go outside, if it happened that we did go outside process, we did do something that was not perfectly in line with, the roadmap that we set out for ourselves. As we learn from that, we correct the roadmap, we correct our processes, we fix whatever needs to be fixed, so that in the future we can say, when that guy comes down the road and says, you approved it for that guy, why don't you do it for me? We can say, we did do it for that guy. We learned, we set new processes in place, and now
Right.
this is, sorry, you're not grandfathered in, that guy
Right.
is.
The key is to make sure that at any given point in time, we're applying all the processes to everyone in the same class, the
Right.
same way. And so if we change our processes and then we start applying those processes uniformly to all the applicants afterwards, we're in good shape, despite the fact that we had different processes before. Those are no longer applicable. I think the other thing that's helpful is what's up on the screen, that even though we're not achieving the regular city code standard, it's still much better than what's on the existing subdivision plat that was approved by the previous variances. So despite the challenges, we're still more compliant than we were before. So I think that's a great
Pushing it
result.
back in the right direction.
I mean,
even if we
yes.
don't quite get
Yeah. These are more stringent requirements, so.
Is there anything else, Bart, that you needed on this one?
No, the only other, item I had was on the lot sizes, just quick clarification if you're interested. A lot of it was in your packet, but, so the question came up, and I'm thinking this is probably where the discrepancy was. So on our, Salt Lake County Recorder's Office, the data we get from them and put on our maps for the parcel sizes, they list that as 0.09. Well, that's correct if it's rounded up, for not just kind of a rudimentary summary, but if you actually go to the subdivision plat, lot 6, lot 9, and lot 13, those are right at the bare minimum lot sizes for that R38 zone. So, so I can understand where the confusion was. I think if you get a more accurate rounding, it comes to like 0.0915, something like that. But yeah. So, just wanted to clarify
Does
that.
anybody want to weigh in on that? Okay, good. I'm glad. Okay, let's move on. This one,
So do we need a motion to move this forward, Alan?
No, the motion to postpone was to bring it back within no later than 120 days. So we have action from the council to move forward with the setbacks as described and look at an option
I just want to
3.
make sure, since we're considering it committee of the whole, we don't need a motion to kick it out to the council.
No, the council already acted on this one by postponing it. They desire it to come back when it's ready.
But it came back tonight, right?
well, not to the council though. This is, yeah. All right, anything else on this one? Yay, okay. Moving on, let's go to number 2. This is the discussion of the citywide survey results. I imagine you'll,
Chair, who all is doing the survey? If it's just Alan, I would propose that maybe we go to the other items where we have staff.
oh, yeah, that's fine. Is that, Alan, is it, who needs to be here for the result, the survey thing?
I serve at the pleasure of the council.
Well, yeah, but no, my question is just clarifying, who needs to be here for that, do you know?
Just me and probably that side of the room.
Okay, who are gonna be here anyway? All right, let's go ahead and take that out of order then, and let's go to C. This is a discussion regarding section 814.7, grave decorations, talking about flexibility for family members, what can't be placed on graves and how long they can be there for. We got one of our Daves here to help us with this. Who wants to, just to give us an introduction? You might.
Well, no, I think, Kate, I think,
Cat,
Right, bud.
Council Member Bloom and myself brought it forward.
Yes.
so
So
let
would
them
you like to hear
explain
from us?
why.
Usually there's a name at the bottom. This just says council discussion. So who wants to lead it?
Go for it.
I do, I think. Members, I sent the 3 new members the email that we received a while back from Emily about her son. Then we heard from Mrs. McConaughey, Kathy, and her son Chris. The concern is a while back we changed our cemetery code and we restricted a lot of things, some of which was a good thing because some of it was a safety thing, especially when we are taking care of the cemetery in the summer and doing lawn care, because items could get flipped up into our staff's eyes and stuff. So it made sense, but we feel we went a little too far from what the feedback from those that use the cemetery. And a cemetery is a place where it's a hollow place where people can go and many people will go and spend time with their loved ones there. So really what we're proposing is that we tweak it a little bit. And the tweak that we're going to propose is that from mid-October until at least a week after whichever month Easter falls on, a week after Easter, that we just allow people to decorate their loved ones' graves. We're not doing lawn care during that time because that's November to March, April at the latest. So it's no longer an issue for that. Many of these family members, as you heard from Mrs. McConaughey, they'll buy stuff that they put there yearly. So they go back and get it. And if we have an individual problem with someone that's just building up, staff could call and address that with that family. But I just think it would be a good idea to give these people the opportunity to decorate their family's graves in the manner that they choose. I don't think it will be abused. I don't think it will harm staff, but it will certainly help those that are mourning the loss of their loved ones. So that's our proposal, and the why was because it was brought up by residents. Do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. And like you said, if there is an individual issue, that's something that we can address individually. It's not like it's a massive graveyard. It's something that can be handled respectfully. Because I don't want one person to ruin the experience for everybody else. So I feel we can extend some sort of common sense when it comes to that, so that we are allowing our families in our city to grieve how they want to grieve, but also be respectful on both sides.
Chime in.
Chad,
Right.
Rock, paper, scissors for it. I'm not calling it.
So the one thing I want to reiterate, obviously I don't spend a lot of time in this cemetery. I do go to my grandpa's, which is up on the hill, which is a private cemetery. I think we just need to remember, and I was kind of concerned when Councilmember White, like I said, we need to contact the families. I don't know that our sextons in the city have the names and numbers of all these people in the cemetery. So I'm not sure that we should be contacting whoever's putting stuff on the graves, or if we even can.
There's a way that they can, and it's not everyone that they need to call. Most people come back and take their stuff. It's not usually an
No, I
issue.
get that, but I mean, I don't think there's a Rolodex of numbers for these people to call and say, oh, here's the McConaughey's, call them.
I think we should ask staff about that. In Lehigh, there is. They have a contact number for
For every single
plots.
grave?
Yeah, I mean,
In
they do,
Lehigh, they
even up
do.
in Salt Lake, when there was an issue with my grandmother's, they called our family.
I think we could do a thing that if you place a decoration, you need to have your name, name or number on there for contacting. That way, if something is moved or something like that, we would know it. My only real concern with this, because it sounds like a horrible thing to be the one that, is telling people how to grieve. But to go with what Councilmember Bloom said, you don't want one person to ruin it. And one person can ruin it. And I mean really ruin it. And that's why I don't mind the time frame of the things, but I do think we might still want to look at what is deemed allowable within that.
We have that, yeah.
Okay, well,
Well-
it sounded to me like because you just said decorate how they want. That was the phrase. And so I went, whoa, no.
No, there's guidelines already.
Okay,
yeah.
well, if those are still in place.
but my question is, are the guidelines too restrictive? I'm looking, and here's where I'm going with this. I'm okay with the November through March, maybe even extending that to April a little bit and saying, hey, whatever. I mean, because I don't think staff's doing much lawn care out, and you can correct me in a minute, Dave. What my concern was when we got the email from the one resident, is that the ordinance says living flowers, artificial flowers, including floral pieces and flags are the only approved grave decorations. But then we allow grave decorations not to exceed 18 inches in height or extend beyond the mandatory 6-inch mow strip around the headstone. I would rather be a little bit more expansive to allow like pinwheels,
Stuffed animals.
stuffed animal, those kind of things, particularly in the winter. I'd be okay with if it's less than 18 inches in height and it doesn't extend beyond the mandatory 6-inch mow strip, what do we care? I mean, I don't want the glass there. I get 100% the glass and the vases and those kind of things. But if it's what I'm just thinking is, I go over to Redwood Estates. That's where a couple of people are buried I don't like, this is, this is the picture that we have in front of us is excessive. That doesn't work. But, if somebody wants to put a little snowman globe that glows in the dark, that's 18 inches high, in front of the grave, I'm okay with that. If it and it gets removed before, mowing season. I don't want this in the cemetery because at some point in time, there may be you go to a lot of other cemeteries and heck, you have headstones on top, you have 2 or 3 headstones between the headstone and what would be this little fence. So I don't want this. But what I'm okay with would be, a bow or two, or, some pinwheels, those kind of things, as long as it meets the dimensions in 8.14.7B, I'd be okay with, and my suggestion would be in the line that talks about and flags or similar type items. I'd be okay with just a little bit expansive wording there to say it's okay to put a pinwheel or something else. But not this crazy. No, I don't want to say that's craziness, because that's a way that somebody grieves. But I don't want to go that far
I think,
expression. But I do want to be able to have a little bit more expansive than flowers and flags.
yeah, maybe prohibit what needs to be prohibited, but not spell out only these things are approved. And as opposed to having an approved list, let's have a prohibited list and make it as small as practical, right? And so instead of having a approved list, you can only do flowers and flags. That's kind of silly, I think. I mean, people who lose kids leave stuffed animals. They just do. Pictures, other things. That's cultural.
My friend leaves a Mountain Dew for her husband.
Yeah, I have friends that do that too. I don't think it's Mountain Dew. I don't remember what it is, but they leave a can of something. Yeah.
I just want to be able to make sure that we're respecting not only our staff who is taking care of the grounds, but we're allowing our residents to have more opportunities to have their feelings and have their grievings and being able to respect that. And I want to find that balance. And I do like the aspect of saying these are prohibited and this is prohibited during this time frame, and leave it at that and use the common sense and judgment to take care of any individual issues.
Common sense is just a tough word because it is.
Not so common.
It's not very common.
And by the
Uh,
way, we're government. So.
as we can see in the photo. That's my thing. If we can just find out and just kind of make sure that things are in place. Like I said, my only worry, and it could have just been you were saying, but when you said decorate as you will, then I was like, oh man, we're gonna have it's gonna look like a flea market at our at our cemetery, and I don't think that is what I would want my relatives buried near. I get that people grieve in their own way, but you also have to be respectful for the others. So if we're doing that, I agree completely with Councilmember Green about that's too prohibitive what we have. We need to make sure that people get a chance to have a little bit of variance. If it's Mountain Dew, if it's the beer or Jack Daniels or whatever, I'm okay. I didn't say, it's not your grave.
So I'm just going to ask now that you've heard us yap for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, what are your thoughts?
And can we take this
Well, he's
picture
heard us,
down, by
he's
the
put
way?
up, he's
I don't
put
feel
up with
comfortable
this
it.
much longer than that.
Well,
But
I could speak as a farmer. We don't have hours according to that last conversation. Farmers work 365 days a year. Stock have to be fed, but things have to be milked. And so anyway, but we're going to focus on grave decorations, not farming, but it was a fun conversation to listen to. As a farmer myself, I could give you guys a lot of insight on that. So focus on grave decorations. So I'm here in mid-October through a week after Easter to address that concern. That's, depending on when Easter is, because it fluctuates. That's a 6-month period. And so I do have a lot of concern of what the aesthetics of the cemetery would look like after that. I did take a tour with Isaac before he left, before this ordinance went through, showed him the condition of the cemetery. And at that point, we were fielding a lot of complaints, similar to what, Bob had mentioned, council member. And it was the opposite of what you're hearing now. So if we go one way, we've kind of created what we're talking about tonight. But if we go the other way, then we have the condition of my loved ones buried here by all of this junk. And so we start fielding those calls about, this looks unmaintained. It looks horrible. I can't believe I have somebody buried here. Don't you guys respect me? And so to Councilmember Bloom's comment, we've got to find a balance of all this. When we're talking about approved items, it is very specific. So a lot of the things that you guys talked about technically wouldn't be approved items. And so that would have to be a change of code to allow that. The 18-inch height thing is very specific to essentially that, nothing can be over 18 inches. It has to be on that, not extending past that mow strip, but the approved items are still that. So if we want to expand that list of what is not approved, that would have to be a change of ordinance for sure.
Mr. Naylor, I just feel like we went too far and that we need to bring it back a little bit. And I agree, we don't want it to be, maybe we don't want our cemetery to look like the example, but we also don't want it, I don't want residents, loved ones to feel like, what the heck? I've done this for years and now my wreath is gone. I can't go and grieve. I can't celebrate holidays with my baby
No,
because the city won't let me. So I know that we can come up with something better than we've got.
yeah. And I guess to kind of clarify a little bit, the old ordinance was very similar to the new ordinance. The new ordinance was intended to be a better communication of expectations of when something is to be cleaned off. Where the old ordinance gave us a lot of the same abilities. And where we're seeing a little bit of this is admittedly, when the new ordinance went in place, even though the old ordinance gave us a lot of those authorities to do what we do now, they weren't common in practice. And so it set a precedence that was just what we did. But in theory, the old ordinance would have been very similar to our maintenance practice now. The direction to staff is, currently is we're following the ordinance. We're being the stewards of the ordinance. And so, and I don't want to discredit the lack of staff's efforts on that in the past, but I can say that the common practice didn't meet what that past ordinance was. So you have an escalated effect right now going on with the complaints because yes, they had, decorations that might have sat out there for 4 months, but that wasn't the old ordinance. And so we are in a transition zone right now that it's tough for everybody. Believe me, I hear Craig talking to residents.
Oh, I'm sure he gets
But
a lot of.
I also heard our past sexton talking to people about their concern with the aesthetics of the cemetery. So we need to get a balance.
So maybe it's during that time frame, but that they understand and they're educated that look, after Halloween goes away. After Christmas goes away.
Could we look at not necessarily a blanket time, but a block here, a block here, a block here. So that way we are getting it cleaned every, 3-4 weeks or whatever it needs to be. Obviously, Christmas is going to be important to a lot of people and very likely Easter. But just that we know that you've got a block of time that I think these people,
Yeah.
what they were worried about was losing some of their items or not being able to do it. If they knew that this is a 2-week block or a 3-week block, that this is going to be okay. But we're not saying a 6-month block of free for all and you just change out your decorations when you want.
And actually that is what Mrs. McConaughey suggested,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
She said
yeah.
2 weeks and I'm okay with that. I
I
just,
can be behind.
I worry that, how do you know? You're the sexton. Okay, are you supposed to say, oh, that came on Tuesday, so in 2 weeks, Tuesday, that's gone. That's why I was like, I don't know if 2 weeks works because then who monitors that? And I say I put it there on Wednesday because I'm grieving. and it was actually Monday and you wrote it down as Monday and then it's gone when I come on Wednesday. So that's why I was like, I don't know. So I am more than open to hearing ideas. I just feel like we have gone too far and we need to allow a little more than what we're allowing. And I like the idea that Chair Jacob said of having just more of a list of no glass, no this, no this, no this. Those that are steadfast that we just can't have there, and one of them is you're not putting up a fence around your area.
And that's in the ordinance now.
It
Right,
is.
there's a lot in our ordinance already.
Yeah.
Well, so let me also, I look at this time, I'm gonna look at, 1847C. And there's a lot of words in there, that say, okay, if it's not this Tuesday, then it's that Tuesday, followed by a state holiday.
After the first Monday.
After the
following-
first Monday, that's right, after the first Monday. Look, I want to make it easy for you guys. And so if there is a way to simplify this, to say, because generally people put these things on graves right around holidays, right? So if we said something, and the holidays, if we just say it's the holiday plus 2 weeks, or it's the holiday plus 165 days, that which is way too long, by the way. I'm just using that as hyperbole. But if we say holiday plus 10 days or holiday plus, what I want to see is something simple for you guys to administer as well. Because I think when I read this, oh, the grave decorations will be removed on the next Tuesday if there's no state recognized holiday, but then it's the second Tuesday following the state recognized holiday. I mean, my heck, that's just that to me, that's convoluted, right?
It's been pretty easy for staff though.
Has it?
Yeah,
But
every
but
Tuesday they clean up the cemetery. If it's a state
that's
holiday,
all.
then they skip that Tuesday and clean
But,
it up.
but
the
you know,
following
and
Tuesday.
like we heard, maybe 1 week is too short. And so it's 2 weeks after the holiday, or something that's just as simple. There's the holiday plus 2
I
weeks
have an
and then it's the
idea.
next Tuesday or something. I don't know, but you guys understand how to maintain the cemetery better. I'd like something a little more simple that, like what we heard from the McConaughey's, that the wreath holder that they had, they ended up losing because it was just a short time period that was out. I'd like to extend that time frame a little bit.
I got an
and-
idea. How
Go.
about the first business day of the month between November and April? Is that too long?
Well,
Is that too easy?
Well, what if instead, could you put a sign up that said, like Halloween decorations will be taken off November 1st. Christmas decorations can go up on this date, they'll be taken down. And so that there's a clear board that people know, okay, Christmas can go up on this date. It will be removed this date if they haven't removed it.
I was trying to be too simple, I guess.
so I was just actually up to a different cemetery up on the east side, and there is concepts out there where basically there's a message board that says exactly when the cleanup dates are, and so that is a practice out there. They're more than just a few times a year though. We did kind of have a conversation about trying to get some funding for like a kiosk and information board somewhere down there so that we can portray that to the residents, because right when we say ordinance, they're like, yeah, I haven't seen that. Nobody reads signs or ordinances or a lot of what's going on in this
Well, and there are
area,
some
so.
people who rely on that. They'll put up their deck, their stuff for Memorial Day, knowing that somebody's gonna clean it up
Yeah.
for them. So, there are people who use your services as a maid service rather than what they're doing. But I think if we can get a block of time and say Christmas you know, you can decorate for Christmas from, you know, December, whatever, 20th through November 3rd or something like that, or, you know, whatever becomes 2 weeks. Yeah. No, I'm at November. It's a full year around.
11 months only.
11 months only, and
But
that's it.
Thanksgiving, dang it, we're giving you your due.
But, you know, I think if we can come up with something like that, and I really wouldn't mind, I think that it would have been appropriate if you're gonna put something up there that you're expecting to bring back, I would certainly have put my name and number on something, because I have seen what kids do to things at, you know, grave sites where they're throwing things around. And I would love it if someone found something that I had left for my loved one on a grave site and it got tossed somewhere else. And someone said, "Hey, I found this over here. I wanted to make sure you got it back." I mean, I would just be putting my name on those things, but might be something that we just ask people to do. If you're going to do something bigger, please.
Yeah, especially something if
Label
you
it.
want it back.
Yeah, if you want it
Yeah.
back.
But what is once a month during those non-maintenance months? Is that too long?
So I'm gonna say that that would probably work, through the non-maintenance periods,
Yeah,
but,
during the
but
maintenance periods.
you have to understand that those, you know, in code where you have those holidays, uh, it almost builds those lags in there. So, I mean, when you have Christmas and then you go 2 weeks after that, it's almost a month, but we need to build the front end of that on
Well,
the Christmas
But I mean,
part.
something, yeah, well, something like the first business day of the month that excludes, the Monday holidays or whatever, or if New Year's Day falls on a Monday or, whatever it is, right? A day that you wouldn't normally be working, it's taken off. Sorry, Chris. Let's try this. Chris sent me a note, said I'm not talking loud enough. That can't be true.
I mean, we'd
But-
have to look out on a
but I mean,
calendar of
if
how
it's-
that plays out, you know.
But it's predictable, right? Like if I'm gonna, if let's just say my kid's birthday, who passed away, is February 2nd, I know that if that's after the first Monday, if the first Monday's on, or first business day is on the 1st, I can decorate on the 2nd, and I know it's going to be there until March 2nd. But if it's the next year, the year before, or whatever, where it falls before, I've got to decorate in advance and go. If I want to leave it there for 2 weeks, I got to go 2 weeks before his birthday and leave it up for 2 weeks. Whatever. Either way, on the specific date, you'll know if it's before, if it's after, or whatever, and you'll plan your celebrations or your events, your meeting.
Where
at
you
the
have a little hard
cemetery
time though is if that day you want to celebrate is the
falls
30th.
on the day,
Or
Well,
the
what if it's
30th,
on the
or, you know.
second Tuesday after the third Monday on.
Yeah,
what?
but I mean, if it is a thing where it's the day before that first Monday, then
Right.
your decorations are only going to be up for,
Right.
a day.
Well, then you plan it out and you decorate further in advance.
Well, but then you're not doing the service of what you
Well,
wanted.
what I'm saying is there's
Yeah.
always going to be a day, and it's
Yeah.
always going to be arbitrary. So, as long as it's a predictable arbitrary day,
I'm with Kayleen. I like the board idea.
oh yeah, well, something's got to be put on the board though. We got to decide what that is. If we put this Tuesday thing on the board, people aren't going to be any more clear than they are now. So,
I mean, to go to your question or kind of your comment, predictability would be good. Information, expectations, all those things are what we attempted to try to do with the current ordinance. With the board, if you looked at the calendar, and identified those cleanup days, I think that we could accomplish a lot of what you're talking about. One of the problems you have with that, first business day of the month is that works for some, but not all. Everybody has a different situation down there. There's 365 days a year that there's birthdays.
right,
that
you're
there's
not going to be
deaths.
able to accommodate
You're
everything.
not gonna be able
You're just
to,
never going to
yep.
be able to accommodate.
Yep, and
accommodate
so, communication, I think, would be key. But some people only come, once a year to that cemetery, so they're not seeing these boards, they're not seeing this information. So,
But when they come once a year, aren't they usually coming on Memorial Day or close to it?
yeah,
And that's
or,
in the summer when we're more restrictive. And I think I'm still in favor of being more restrictive when we've got lawns that need to be mowed.
yeah, Yeah.
So I'm just talking the winter months when we're not mowing the lawn.
And see, what I just heard you say, Dave, is look at the calendar. So I'm not sure I want to put this in ordinance, but I'd be willing to do it. Is look at the calendar and look at holidays and say, Christmas, the items will be taken down, Christmas decorations, we clean the cemetery January 3rd, or, something like that. Halloween, it's November 15th, or as close to the November 15th as we can. Memorial Day, it's the 10th of June. What if,
It'll stay the Tuesday or whatever it is now for Memorial Day.
It's a lot to put on a board though.
well, but we can put that in ordinance, and the board could, the board would only be a few would be really 12 lines, because we're trying to deal with 12 months. But even if it wasn't 12 lines, it would be 5 or 6 lines for the next 5 or 6 cleanup dates, and then just update it on because what I'd see it as a electronic messaging board type thing. And I'm willing to kick in, I'm willing to find the money for something like that to help with that. Because we're not talking about tons of money, so I'd be willing to try to come up with some funds for that as well. So that's, maybe there's we come up with a decent calendar that works for everybody, and then just, we have a sign, or a board, and whether it's a variable messaging board or just a permanent board that recites the ordinance, I'm good with either one of those. So, if there's something that we can do to work it out, just to make it a little bit longer, a little bit more simple than the Tuesday stuff, and a little bit more expansive, I'd be good with that.
So quick question. So we're taking stuff off the graves, right? I'm not talking the summertime. I'm not talking flowers and stuff that you throw away. Do we hold this stuff for 30 days, or what happens? So for example, that Christmas tree, if we pick up the Christmas tree, where does that go?
Typically that would go into the dumpster. Yeah. So we have talked about trying to come up with a system where, and this is the hard thing, right? Because everything means something to somebody.
Right.
And so,
Like, do we have a room at the Parks Department that we could designate as the holding area?
not really. So past practice, years and years ago, we'd hold on to decorations for a certain amount of time. If you can imagine how much stuff builds and whatnot.
Right.
So we kind of went away from that practice. But there is some items out there that, as staff's going through, you have some common sense that you look at and like, this has value and meaning, and we'll try to tuck that away, expecting somebody to call.
Okay.
The problem with that is it's very subjective. And so we might get a call on, why'd you throw this wreath away? And that had just as much value as something that we thought had value. And so it's really kind of a tight spot. But we went really hot and heavy on this really right at the first. And I haven't introduced my co-part here. And so I've been trying to find a time to break in to do that.
Go ahead.
And so this is Craig Hudson. And so Craig Hudson is our new cemetery sexton. He's been here for just over a month. And I'll tell you what, we had this job posting out for over 6 months, and it was very, for me, it was a very serious job that I didn't want to hurry and just put it out and hire somebody. So I took a lot of time. We went, through applications. I kept the job open for a very long time, looking for the right person. And when Craig finally walked through the door, I finally knew that the wait was over and the wait was worth it. And so we brought Craig Hudson in. Craig comes from the cemetery industry. He's been in the industry for over 20 years. He's been on every aspect of the cemetery, from from digging the holes to meeting with families to computer software, you know, to embalming and at the mortuary, setting up services, selling caskets. Every aspect of the funeral industry he's been involved in. And so our long wait was well worth it. And we're very excited to have him on our staff. He's a very good cultural fit for the city. And we have very high hopes. He's very, very compassionate. In 1 month, I've already heard him speaking with residents with a lot of compassion, trying to work through some very difficult situations. So just want to welcome him on board. So
What a way to be introduced. Welcome.
I was gonna ask how many people were dying to get the job.
Nobody, but they're
Sorry,
dying,
Mayor, I had to get that in before you did.
nobody, but they're dying to be his customer. Corbin, you got your light on?
Well, Dave did what I wanted to do, suggest, introduce Craig and have
Oh, your
you hear
thunder.
from him. He has spent a career in the cemetery business, and I think he has a lot of insights on this issue. But if I may, would you be open to considering just allowing the sexton to set the cleanup dates as long as it was posted? I think the sexton has to balance the cleanliness, maintenance of the cemetery, the issues of safety and lawn maintenance with sensitivity of these decorations. The sexton is the one that has to receive the complaints and know how long is too long when it's starting to look like a flea market, and how short is too short when the complaints are that you cleaned up stuff I left there yesterday. And as long as it's posted by the sexton when the next cleanup date will be, allow the sexton to look at the calendar and determine those cleanup dates.
I couldn't say yes fast enough to that. And I think Commissioner or Councilman Shelton was saying the same thing.
I thank you. Yes, I agree with that. Let's put the decisions in the hands of the experts.
Yeah, I think if you had introduced him sooner, we would have just bypassed you and gone right to him and said, when do you think we should do it?
Conversation should have been a
I'm
lot
trying
shorter.
to be his mentor here still. So
Push your butt on there.
the 4th of December, and so there was already, Christmas decorations on the graves. And then we just removed those the second week in January. And I think it's we're gonna need to educate people. And there's, we're a working cemetery, so even in the winter time, we're running turf vehicles over the grounds, raking up leaves or blowing them, digging graves. And so there's a lot going on, even though it's not, so obviously summertime is really busy, but I think again, just educating people, we could put signs all over the cemetery and people just don't read them, we've got it posted on our website. I was working with a family earlier in December, and they were decorating their grave, and I let them know when we were gonna pick up, and we had a great conversation. I spent some time with them. They needed a broom, and they still didn't come when it was time to pick up the Christmas items. So, you can
And lead a horse to water.
yeah, exactly. You can tell them till they're blue in the face, and I don't feel like you could be in this profession and not have empathy or sympathy for families. It's tough, especially when it comes to children. And so I think it's important they have a strong written policy, but then you can kind of back off of that. When we're going through the cemetery, and I'm just speaking for myself, I haven't even talked to Dave about this, but if there's a card or happy birthday balloon, I look at the date on the marker, and I'll leave it another week. That's not going to inhibit any maintenance or care of the cemetery. So,
But right now, balloons are prohibited. So that's where.
And birthday cards.
And birthday cards. So if you can look at some, I like Corbin's idea of, and boy,
Yeah.
that would simplifies about 8 lines worth of code, right? But what that would do is it would say that you're responsible for the cleanup as long as it's posted properly and we can provide the resources for the right boards.
Yeah.
Mayor, what do you think?
I think, yeah, I think communication is going to be key on that. That's like you said, all you can do is all you can do.
Right.
But I think the ones that are going to care the most and that would complain if it's done wrong are the ones that will also look for, well, how was I supposed to do this, right? They're going to be the ones where you could come back and say, yeah, it was posted on the board. Didn't you see it? Or, I'm sorry you didn't see it. Let me tell you what the policy is so that you know it'll be posted on this board so you can look next time. And then they'll know, right? It's only gonna take once or twice before people are picking up on that. I think a good idea is to let you guys and maybe work with legal to write up a proposed idea based on the conversation we've had and kind of where we've sort of landed, and bring us back a draft ordinance.
But
and we chat.
I'm not okay just saying carte blanche that whoever the sexton is. I think we do need some timeframes that we also put in there, because while you may be willing to let them, we don't stay in a position forever, but our code does until we change it again. Our job is code. So while I'm perfectly happy to saying, yes, let's give the sexton some leeway, but I want some guardrails so that we don't have the next guy that comes in and is our sexton says 3 days. I've decided 3 days and that's it.
Well, if he puts it in and we put it in this
So-
code, the next one would have to do the same thing and we would have to
Well,
either.
Right, but that's not what
say
I
yea or
heard
nay.
Craig say.
Okay.
So when it comes back, I would like to have some guardrails as well as some flexibility for your sexton.
So.
Does
what-
that make sense? I want it to be a little more open than what it currently is during the winter months for people, because right now it's a pretty short time frame.
Well, he said December 4th all the way to the second week.
That's what he gave them, but that's not what's in code.
So,
So code is what we work on, so I need to ensure that the code does what the spirit up here has said.
so what I hear you saying is something to the effect of cleanup schedules posted by the sexton, but no sooner than 2 weeks, 17 days, whatever,
Yeah,
so that-
14 days, whatever we want. I don't care.
Whatever the would work for you guys. So I can see where she's going with the bumper, because some new guy might come in and say, well, nope, it's 3 days after the holiday. So I see where Councilmember Whitelaw is going with that. And so maybe as part of this, it's at the schedule set by the sexton, with a minimum of X number of days that works for you guys. It's based on posted, but it's got a minimum number of days so that there's at least an expectation of they'll be there for 13 days, 16 days, whatever the number is. I don't care.
Can I go over here? Either Dirk or Josh has a light on over here, and I'm like, sorry,
It's
either the
me.
mayor or the attorney.
I just felt like I appreciate the flexibility you're providing the sexton to make his job more effective. And the reason I think the flexibility is so good, because so many circumstances are so different, we can't take all of them into account. But he has the flexibility to do that as he sees what those needs are. And so thank you for doing that. I think he's got a good feel for it, that we can bring something back to you. But I see there's a couple more lights on, so I thought we were there, so that's why I clicked in there. I think we're ready, but if there's some more you want to suggest to make sure we work this properly before we bring it back to you, then
I think we're pretty close.
Yeah, I think what I would love to see is you've heard everything we've had to say. We want something a little longer, a little better than people worrying about having their stuff going out. I think the very fact that you said in one of your things, I read the gravestone and knew that it was recent. I'll give it another week. That shows that you have the compassion I think we're looking for. And so I think, as for me, if you were to put something together that you thought that this was what was going to work for your crew, for the cemetery, and for the people who are going to need to be grieving there, and we can then bring that into code, then it becomes the code we're looking for. And then if another one comes and says no, 3 days, then we can say yay or nay to whatever they say. But I think you've heard what our compassionate needs are and the needs of the people of West Jordan and those who are interred here. But and just make it. I think we put it in your hands and then we can approve or deny that. Yeah, tweak whatever's needed.
Yeah, I definitely think that we've had enough conversation to give you kind of a direction, maybe not a clear direction, but at least a general direction, go northish and come back with a draft ordinance and let's see what we can do.
So that's, you took the words out of my mouth. I've digested, Craig's heard.
You're taking a lot of notes.
Yeah, and so, I think we've got a general scope that we could take a really good stab at this and bring something back.
We don't want to stab. We don't want any more murders.
Based on, yeah, we don't want
If you
anybody
stab at it
else.
too much, we might need a bigger
to-
cemetery.
That's right.
We don't have very many lots left down there, so we probably better not do that.
And by the way, welcome to West Jordan.
And,
Uh,
and Mayor, since we're talking about the cemetery, we need to, and I know it's part of the station area plan that we're gonna be looking at, but we need to talk about the use of that extra land behind the parks building and expanding the cemetery and filling that in, and we probably ought to do that sometime.
yeah.
We've had some of that, but we haven't had a lot of great discussions. Maybe we need to solidify that, what we need to do and, set up the funding and those kind of things for that. So just something for the future since we're talking about
Right, I believe that's gonna be included in the station area plan, and that fits right in because that would be high density.
Dwelling units. Mr. Anderson.
I just want to make sure that we're all clear. What you want to bring back is the flexibility is up to the sexton as long as there's time parameters. You want me to work with the sexton and Mr. Naylor and staff on a couple dates, timeframes to bring back that you can insert a time frame in or adjust it with
Well,
that
yeah.
flexibility of the section. Is that what I hear?
I think we let them write the policy and see where it lands.
Okay. Okay.
Let's see where it lands and we'll
I
kinda-
could draft.
But I think Mr. Anderson's trying to ensure that Mr. Naylor has the information he needs. Like, are there 4 or more of us that want an information board? They want to know that, because if not, then they don't want to put that in code. Do we want to give them a certain time frame to work for? Or do we want them to just bring it back, whatever they feel is right?
Also, are
I
they
think
okay
that's
with
what
which
Mr.
items?
Allen's trying to get. Yeah, what we've discussed a lot. I
Yeah,
think
well,
they,
it would be up to you to say, are you okay with balloons and birthday cards? I think that's the kind of, there's more to it. So that's what we need to make sure it's in.
Let's, I would say, let's see what they come up with.
Right.
And then, and give them, since they're involved in this day to day, let's give them the first shot. And then, work through that. And then if there's something that we would like to modify, we work with them, but let's give them first shot.
Yeah, that's the way I heard it as well.
And then when it's drafted, bring it to a council meeting, not another work session.
Well, let's look at it and see what they come back with, and we'll decide if it needs another conversation or if it's too vague or if it's too specific or whatever. Yeah, let's see where it comes back, and then we'll figure out where it fits on the agenda.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Welcome. I did not see that being a 45-minute conversation.
Thanks for your patience.
I should know better. I know. Let's go to D. This is discussion on the maximum amount of fines for code enforcement violations. This is Councilmember Green and Whitelock who brought this up.
While Brock and Scott are coming up, here's the reason why we want to talk about the discussion about maximum amount of fines for code enforcement violations. We hear all the time, and we make fun of big bad code enforcement, so we're just gonna make fun of you again more, Brock, but we hear all the time, and we know that it's not actually always accurate because of what the ALJ does and suspends. But what we hear is, I had to spend $950 fine to get my trees cut. The perception, and I'm going to say perception is everything here, perception is, and we've actually even heard citizens say that I paid less of a, well, I paid less of a fine, or I paid more of a fine for my trees than if I'd have got a DUI upstairs. So what what I'm looking at, Kayleen and I talked about this. Councilmember Whitelock, let's be more formal since we're in council meeting. Councilmember Whitelock and I talked and are saying, do we want the perception that we have these big fines, or is our goal to get the person in code enforcement? What's the balance? I'm just going to I'm going to throw a couple of things out here, and then I'll turn the time over to Councilmember Whitelock. Currently under Utah code, if I'm not mistaken, an infraction is $750, and that's what we're capped at. But then we have reinspection fees and those kind of things. What I'd suggest is that maybe we have a first time offense type thing and a second time offense time thing, but also say maybe the maximum amount of a fine plus the reinspection fees can't exceed the $750 that it's an infraction, so that it doesn't look like we're super excessive. That's where I'm going, and I'll turn the time over to you for your thoughts, because you were involved in this.
So it came forward because of complaints over trees, and one of them lives pretty close to the mayor and is not happy. And so for me, I want to take it to the basics, and I want us to consider this. What is the purpose of code enforcement? And what are the desired outcomes? Because I really think that's where we need to, when we're looking at what are we going to charge, I think those are the two questions we need to ask ourselves. What is the purpose of code enforcement? And we might all have a different opinion of that. And what are we trying to, what is the purpose? What do we want the outcome to be? And for me, the purpose of code enforcement is to help maintain our city so that it is a nice place to live and people feel good about coming here. I'm a big believer in the broken window syndrome. I think if you let things go down, crime goes up. So for me, code enforcement is very important to me. But I also don't want our residents to feel like we're being the heavy arm and that we're excessive in our charges. And for more than one reason, I don't want them to feel that way. And I don't want my friends located far north of here to decide that we are, because then they'll decide what we do. So that when I'm looking at this, that's what I'm looking for is, and I know it is a balance, and I don't think I'd ever work the job that Brock does, but I sure appreciate him and his staff for doing it.
All right. Did you guys want to talk about the process here really quick?
We thought it would be helpful to,
Yeah.
especially for some of the newer council members.
Right.
Yeah, Brock.
Yeah, so our process begins with complaint-based phone calls, emails, those types of things. The officer will go out and do the first inspection generally within 3 days of receiving the complaint, depending on the type of the season it is and the amount of complaints we have. Once the officer goes out, the mayor instituted a courtesy notice into our process that currently is not written in code, but it is the process we follow.
I'm going to pause you there. Do we need that in code?
We are waiting for the Title 16. I've spoken to the attorney's office and we are looking at adding that into our revamp, yes. But we are practicing it and have been for several years now. The officer issues a courtesy notice and gives people 14 days to come into compliance. No fines are attached with it. The officer goes out and conducts a reinspection, which is your second inspection. If the property is still not in compliance, it goes downward to the notice of violation. If it is in compliance, the case is closed, we mail a notice of compliance and we're out of there. So if it is in violation still, we issue a notice of violation. That comes with 14 more days to come into compliance, with the addition of the opportunity to call and say, I need an extension, here's why. And then we can determine what amount of extension. Minimum is generally 2 weeks. Or if it's a simple, another issue that's an issue that we look at and say reasonably they need 30 days, we'll give them 30 days. After the notice of violation is issued, we go out after that time frame is up, whether it be the 14 days or the new compliance date, and we conduct a third inspection. Now, all these inspections are at no charge to the homeowner. If the property is still in violation, we then post on the property, mail, hand deliver hearing notices to let them know a hearing has been set up. So once that hearing is set, that is where the first default, or excuse me, the first reinspection fee comes in. At that point, since we've set the hearing, given a court date, if they can come into compliance and pay the reinspection fee and it passes, we close the case, we take it off of the ALJ's calendar, and they never have to go to a hearing. There's no fines for the violations. Okay. Now, by the time we get to this third inspection and the hearing notice, we're at least minimum 4 weeks, most of the time longer prior to. Now, this is a time frame that they still haven't come into compliance. The neighbors have had to look at the problem for months, but these folks still haven't come into compliance at this point. Once we go to the administrative hearing, which is a minimum of 2 weeks later, so that adds another 2, we're a minimum 6 weeks. The administrative law judge hears the case and makes the ruling on whether they are in violation and the fine amount, or if they're not in violation and he dismisses the case. A lot of times what the administrative law judge will do after hearing both sides is say, okay, I'm going to give you 2 more weeks. Here's your new due date. You come into compliance, pay the reinspection fee, and there won't be a default. So there's another couple of weeks. So at minimum, we're looking 6 weeks before they ever even face fines, let alone the 750, which if Councilman Green, I do believe state law still allows code enforcement to class B misdemeanor up to 1,000. Animal control violations are at infraction at 750, but we have lowered ours from 1,000 to 750. The last time we reviewed this, we opted to go lower. So we are at 750, that of an infraction. And that's up to the administrative law judge whether or not to assess the fine, how much the fine is assessed. So that is our process at this point.
I have a question about that. Let's say it's a weeds thing or a tree problem or whatever, and you go through this whole process. You go to the ALJ, you pay your $900 fine, but you still don't cut your tree, or you still don't cut your lawn. You still don't, whatever the violation is persists, right? I've gone through the process. I paid my fine. I'm still not doing it. If somebody complains again, do I go through it again, or does double jeopardy attach here somewhere?
No, state law does allow us that after 14 days, we can issue another citation. We can start the case over again.
Really?
We have proceeded down that path prior to when someone was renting a luxury rental business from their home.
So you could get a $900 fine every 6 weeks. Theoretically.
Theoretically, yes.
Theoretically.
Yes.
So I would just have to think that double jeopardy is gonna attach here somewhere.
It doesn't
Civil, not
because
criminal, though.
it's civil because
Yeah.
it's civil and a couple
You're not
other
being tried
things.
for an offense, yeah.
I'm just.
I don't see these fines as outrageous then. I mean,
I-
they're going
yeah, I
through this
agree.
whole process. I see this, I mean, in the exception of maybe an elderly person who can't maintain or do something, I don't see this as an issue.
Let me ask a question. What would be the estimated cost of each of these? Man-hour costs when you go out and do this inspection and have to go through the notice and posting and all like that. What kind of cost are we looking at by the time you get to where we're getting fines?
The easiest way to look at it, there are some that are 10-minute situations. You hand the person the courtesy notice, you leave, problems resolved. You're driving by, you see, oh, look, property's good, close the case. But we figure on average it's 45 minutes per inspection or per call. And that's based on the mailings, the labeling. Many occasions we have to mail and to multiple people because there's the
Right.
owner, there's the address of occurrence, there's the property manager. And so all that takes time. The
Right.
officers do those mailings because we're mailing a couple thousand notices minimum a year.
I asked the question just because sometimes that fine is to recoup the cost that it took to tell you to clean your act up.
But yeah, and we view code enforcement as we want compliance. My budget, my pocketbook, none of that is based upon what we collect. And that's not of a concern, and it hasn't been since we switched code enforcement in 2012. It's compliance driven. We get the same people quite frequently that are violating the same codes quite frequently that we deal with 3 and 4 times a year. There's some of you that have called about the same property multiple times. Those owners really don't care. It's a rental property, so they don't care what it looks like, but the neighborhood does. I have yet, and I would love the opportunity to research the cases you referred to that they paid $900 because I've not seen a $900 receipt come through in a very, very long time. I would like to be able to give you the accurate information of what they actually paid, if anything. So very rarely does somebody pay a fine of that amount, the $750. Like I said, I haven't seen one come through in many, many months. It's generally the 158 or even less. I'll reduce the 750 to $100. But if we don't have something to help correct their actions, the violations continue. And this is just one way to correct the actions and the behavior.
This is 750. I will just tell you, we've had people come to this council and tell us that they've had 900. Now that may be what the ALJ said and not what suspended fines would be or those kind of things. But there's still a perception issue, right? And yes, I think we need the I'm gonna say this, the coercive power of government to force compliance. But I also think that we can't look so draconian that people say, well, by the time you tacked on my $750 plus the reinspection fee, I'm paying $1,000. That if we're gonna charge the resident $1,000 to cut their trees, hell, we could probably just call a local tree trimming service, cut their tree back for the $1,000 and charge them for it, right? And so that's where I'm going is if we're really looking for compliance, are we really looking at the fine or should be, and then the second question is this, is the fine, or depending on the circumstance, the fine, or it's not necessarily a fine if they go to the hearing or something because they're not cooperative by the third inspection, we just mitigate it. Because if it's a tree trimming issue, it's in our park strip, right? We own the property. And so it's not like we're going on their property to mitigate something. So if it's a tree trimming thing, instead of charging them the hearing, that, the fine, and that, can we get some contracts with some tree trimming services, cut it, and then we just bill them? You know what I mean? And so is the issue compliance? Is it the issue the fine? Is there a combination of both that we say, for example, if it's a tree issue, because it does. I mean, if you think about this from a public relations thing, I had to trim my tree back and you charged me more than the DUI upstairs. I mean, we heard that. We had the guy stand right there and say that. And so what I'm wondering is, can we have maybe even a combination of fine and mitigation? Your code enforcement officers are pretty smart.
Yeah, they are.
And they're going to know, I'm going to tell you, your code enforcement officers are going to know that if it's a tree, how much it's gonna cost to trim that tree. And if the, and so what I'm looking at is maybe maybe just beyond fines, if the goal is compliance, then to make the city look better, can we use code enforcement and we use the mitigation authorities that code enforcement has just to have a smaller fine? And, let's just hypothetically say, that the fine is $450 plus the mitigation. Because because code enforcement guys are gonna know that the mitigation's $300. Is that a better solution for the city? It's just it's a thought that I'm trying to, because I just don't like residents coming saying, I'm paying $1,000, whether that's the actual number they ended up paying, that's a number that they were told that the city wants $1,000 to trim the trees, and I want to get away from what looks draconian and actually fix the problem.
Kelvin, is there a number that's not draconian?
So,
That you're thinking?
Let me hear.
may,
from
may I
Bob.
say something for a minute?
Yeah, but I piped in first. I mean, this is open mic, right?
Okay.
That was my question. Just, is there a number? Like 750 isn't the number.
Well, 750.
And I'm not being flippant here. I'm just asking what number?
750 plus reinspection fees, I don't like. So if
Oh,
I were
is
max,
500?
if 500 plus reinspection fees, I could live with.
Right.
450 plus mitigation fees, I could live with. It's something that just doesn't sound quite draconian, but that's me.
Let's let the mayor have a quick bite.
The purpose, and I think Brock made it fairly clear, the purpose of the fine isn't to recoup our costs necessarily, is to encourage enforcement. So if there's another number that's more effective on encouraging that enforcement, that would be good. When they come in and say, they're charging me $900, that we're not, that's a potential charge. They haven't been charged that, but that motivated them to come in and talk to us and motivated them to do something. But if there's a better way to motivate them and a different number that still motivates it, then that would be good. As for us rectifying the problem, if it's a tree that's on our property that's over a street, we could rectify that. But if it's, a lot of these are health issues that are in people's yards that we can't go onto that private property and necessarily take care of the problem unless we go through other procedures and steps first. So it's not just appearance, it's also largely health issues that we need to address in there. But we're happy to adjust that dollar amount. That dollar amount was chosen by a previous council because they thought that's what would be one to motivate. We just need something to motivate them. As you can see, we give them lots of opportunities first. We just need them to be motivated to do something because there's the neighbors' health is at stake here.
I can tell you nothing would be more draconian than we came and trimmed your trees, here's a bill. That will definitely cause people to run into the street screaming if we handed them a bill and said, we did this for you. So that I would definitely say no to. I would be interested, gentlemen, in knowing, since the 750 has been instituted, what is kind of the percentage of people who jump on it and take care of the violations, or what is the number, and I know you may not have that exact percentage, but I want to know, is that working?
The drop from 1,000 to 750 in my eyes has not changed anything.
Okay.
We still get the same people that refuse to do it. They can't pay 750, 1,000, didn't matter. You can give them $100 fine.
Right.
They're not going to pay it.
That was actually going to be my next point.
Right.
People aren't doing it.
Just an
not because they
example.
have money to burn.
Just an example. Scott and I dealt with a lady today. The courtesy notice went to her house. They didn't even respond. Notice of violation, didn't respond. Posted the hearing notice. We got a phone call. Wasn't a pleasant one, but we got the phone call.
Sure.
They failed to appeal at the hearing. The judge issued the default judgment. I got another phone call today, not a good one. One of my officers got a phone call today, not a good one, same person. Finally, she came in and spoke to Scott and was in tears. This started in October. Okay, so we're a little bit away. Any reasonable person would be able to get this taken care of. And it was weeds. Simple, go mow your lawn. Okay, that's it. Well, after her talking with Scott, they are now. So after talking to Scott, we had already done a reinspection. Scott and I discussed it and came up with the result of, I called her, said, look, we've been by and inspected your property. We're gonna release the default. She's a single mother of two with a, drug addicted husband, basically.
Mhm.
We didn't charge her a dime. After all the phone calls, after 4 months rather, almost of violations, the people that I feel for the most are the neighbors that keep calling saying, what are you gonna do about this property? What do you, and this is nonstop. I mean, Councilmember Whitelock knows the phone calls I get. So there is no happy medium, it seems, because if you charge them $750, they're not happy. You lower it to 500, they're gonna say, I can't afford 500 anymore, I can't 750.
Right.
You know, those that are gonna violate are gonna violate. And currently, with the current system, without pulling the actual numbers because of the computer issues, we're at about a 90% compliance rate on a couple thousand cases a year. As for remediation, we did over 800 tree canopy cases last year. I'm not sure if Ty has a twin brother, but he would need to help with that. And are we creating a duty at that point? So there's.
Well, our ordinance already calls for mitigation if it's bad enough.
It says we can't.
So the question is, and that leads to another philosophical discussion is, and if there's a health issue that the mayor talks about, you guys don't even have to have a warrant to go shut the place down and go on there and do all that other stuff. And that's draconian as all get out. And so, and the authorities are in there. I think it's being reworked when we work on Title 16. There's some more clear authorities on how to mitigate, but the way the current ordinance is written, we can go tear a house down. Basically, without even a judicial determination, we can tear a house down. So, that's what I'm trying to balance, but maybe it's not worth it. So I'm okay.
I just want to say, I don't really see a huge issue that we can make any better than the current system that is right now. That's what I'm hearing from this dialogue. So I personally don't want to do anything until we tackle Title 16, but for this, for the money, I don't want to touch it.
Mr. Hudson, took me a minute to remember your last name, sorry. Um, So when they don't pay that $750, if they don't, then my understanding is that a lien goes against their property. Am I correct?
We don't file a lien. We file a code enforcement judgment against the parcel with the county recorder's office. All that says, if you go to purchase a house, is that there's been a code enforcement, a unresolved code enforcement action on the property. It's not a lien, as it would say, you
Well,
can't legally.
Our current code uses the term lien. That's why we were talking about Title 16 updates. And so that was one of the issues, is whether we're putting liens on homes. And that's why in some of the suggestions with the Title 16 rewrite, that we just say, we pull that whole fine collection piece away from you and just say it goes to the city. It goes to the city finance office and the city attorney's office, and they collect it through the appropriate means. And if they want to get a judgment, then they can go and actually get then they can go get a judgment right up there, even in small claims, get a judgment, and then they can put the lien in district court and get it actually filed on the case, right? So when we've talked about Title 16 rewrite, we were talking about taking all of that fine enforcement piece out and say, you guys got the fine. The money's now owed. We'll let the people who know how to collect the money do it and pull that out, and let the city attorney's office and Denise's office the treasurer's office handle that. Take it out of 16, and you guys don't have to worry about that at all. That's one of the things that we're looking at with 16 rewrite.
So I'm just gonna say, okay, thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for being here.
I just want to say, going to what Councilmember Lamb said, what number is going to be the right number? It seems like the main thing that we were looking at doing, that you were looking at doing, is bring the number down so that people didn't scream the number $900. They would still scream $600. They would scream 400. They would scream 300. They would scream 50 for something that they don't want to do. So if we're lowering a number just so we seem like a more caring city, but it doesn't change your job at all, then it really hasn't done anything. So I agree. I think the idea that you're trying to do is great with this to lower the number. But I do think that we've been victims of people screaming about the sky is falling when it comes to numbers, and maybe it hasn't been exactly that. And I can definitely see that if I heard that, I would be thinking the same thing, but no number is going to help someone who didn't want to do something in their yard anyway.
I think we've reached a point where it's not broke, so don't fix it kind of a thing. My only thing that I wanted to chime in on is I just looked at the fee schedule for fines and it doesn't have anything to do with 750 or anything else, the $53 a day or the $105 a day. $53 a day for 14 gates gets you to $750. So the $105 a day is never going to kick in if 750 is the cap anyway.
Correct. And that was at a time prior when state didn't have a cap on
Okay.
the amount of fines. So it was
So we do need-
$100 a day after the first
So we
14.
need to update our fee schedule so that it's in compliance.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Just throw that out there. Mr. Anderson, did you want to? Sorry, you. Oh, you're next. Okay. All right.
And you know what? I think that's the good idea. If the fee schedule's not right, we need to fix the fee schedule come budget season and get that right.
Yeah, and I believe it actually says the same thing in Title 16, so that's got to be all part of that rework. And
Yeah, but we'll look at the fee schedule as a whole soon. You know, we're gonna talk budget at the retreat. So, all right. Thank you for being here, guys. Have a good evening. Drive safe. Hopefully it's not too slick out there. Mr. Anderson, let's go back to citywide survey results. Mr. Item number B. I love it when people say number B.
Yeah, to be or not to be.
This is to be.
This is to be. So back in July of 2023, the council and the city and Y2 Analytics presented a survey results from the survey of residents. And if you remember, for the new council members, Y2 worked really hard to make sure that we had representative results. We had similar numbers in all districts. We worked with them for homeowners and renters. We worked as best we could for demographic balance. And we're to the point, we were going to discuss this a couple months ago, and at the time leadership felt like maybe with the new council is better to bring this up. Last year about this time, January, we discussed with the council questions that we might want to ask. There were two different categories. There's kind of a measuring stick category of how are we doing? And we can get a progress report by asking the same questions year over year. There's also kind of the current events questions. And so what I'm asking for tonight is, are there questions? I included all the questions that we used last year. I know there's quite a number of them. I don't know if you've reviewed all of them. So actually two questions. Number one is the survey for this year was in the approved budgets in the council office. Cassidy was the project manager, Cassidy Hansen, who was our policy analyst last year. She was the project manager. Warren Hallmark, our new policy analyst, would be the project manager for this one. And like I said, it's already approved. So number one, do I have support from the council to proceed with the survey for this year? And number two, are there current event questions that we need to update or ask? I want to keep the questions that we're asking. That's kind of a report mechanism year over year, how the city is progressing. And then the idea being that we would bring this back, the results back to you in the June, July timeframe again. According to Y2 Analytics, this winter, springtime is the best time to survey folks. They're not on vacation. They're not tied up with holidays. So this is really an opportune time to ask it. We will be using the survey questions and results that you received in July in preparation for this budget cycle. It's still timely. And we would do this ongoing. So those are the two questions. Number one, do I have council support to proceed with the survey? It's already budgeted. And number two, are there current event questions that we are missing that you would like to see in there?
Before you do that, I'm going to interject here. The reason why this was put on a council agenda several months ago and postponed was the very question about what are we going to do with the survey results? We haven't had those discussions and we haven't done a dang thing with the survey.
The survey is planned to be used for the creation of this budget.
That was supposed to be the last one as well, but we also talked about where do we, when we talked about putting this on the agenda, there were at least a couple of us that said, where do we go from here? What the survey means nothing if we don't do anything with it. It's just a waste of money. It said, hey, we did a survey. We're doing good. So I don't support I don't support spending the taxpayer money until we deal with the old one.
What did you try? I'm new here, so I'm only asking, what did you try to do with the survey? Or did it just,
We did absolutely nothing with it. We got
I
the-
would put that on the council then, for
Why-
me speaking.
Well, but a couple of council members said, let's put it on the agenda. Let's talk about how do we use the survey results? Where do we go from here? And this is the discussion we're getting tonight.
Okay, well,
So
I love surveys and I love working with them,
Well,
so
I
I would
think
want
the
them.
survey is a great idea, and I think introducing to what we have now and then take it into our council retreat. So we have those guidelines of what we want to do with our budget. So
Agreed.
it's still a wise thing to have. I still support it and I still want to continue with the conversation and dive into it, especially when we have more time, like at a council retreat, when we are working on the budget.
Yeah. No, I've seen surveys in the past not get used, and in my opinion, they're just because people don't use them. And that's one thing. So I think if we're going to put it in motion and use, I think they're great to use because that's one way we hear from the city and how the city, would like to see us move forward. It's the same thing when I was going out canvassing. If I went out and canvassed and then did nothing with the information I got while I was canvassing, that's on me. And that's not good. So I think we use this stuff.
How much money did we spend on the last survey?
I think it was right around 25,000.
I think that's what the budget was, yeah.
Yeah, $25,000 of wasted money because we haven't talked about
But
how
it's
to
not
use it.
wasted yet.
Yeah, it is wasted.
We're gonna use it.
I
Right.
think
When?
It's in
Right
this-
now.
Now.
for
We
the
got
budget
results.
preparation.
Because what Alan wants to know is if he's supporting doing another one.
For the
Well,
next one, yeah, we're still
for the
gonna
next
go
year.
into this. We're gonna dive into it. We're gonna dive into it now and then continue it as we go into the discussion.
Yeah,
So we are using
I
it.
haven't seen any, the discussions that were put into the agenda planning were to take that survey from July and say, where do we go from there? We're 6 months later and we still haven't had those discussions.
Oh.
So what good was the survey if we haven't done anything with the data for 6 months to
We
plan?
couldn't do anything with the data with 6 months because the budget was already done. This is for this budget that we're diving into.
it's the speed of government a little
Well,
bit.
but yeah, the survey was done late, but there were things done in that survey that we can address.
Yeah.
And
yep.
it's been 6 months and we haven't addressed them.
I
And so
would
my
say
question
again.
is,
go-
why
go
are
ahead,
we
finish
spending
first.
money on something that if it's gonna take us forever to address it, it's a waste of money.
I would say, how long has this survey been known to the council,
The results,
the results?
the results.
Since
are gotten-
July.
And that's on the council. I mean, all of you, it's on you. You could have looked at any of this and said, the city wants this, the city wants this. You could have been using that information in anything you've done for the last 6 months. If you haven't done that, that's on you, not on the survey. It's not the
I
survey's
don't-
fault. It's on you because you didn't bring it up. You're saying the council
Oh,
didn't do anything, but you as an individual can look at this stuff and bring that up in council.
And you're assuming that I didn't. But the fact of the matter is the council's responsible for helping set direction in the city. And the goal was to use that survey to help direction of the city. And that survey has sat there and done nothing for 6 months.
Well,
So
if that's
my
something you
goal.
wanted to do, you've
Well,
got,
let's-
you've got an ally in me that I'll push it. Because if the city is telling me something they want done, that's what I'm gonna listen to. I'm not gonna listen to the other 6 council members. I'm going to listen to the city. So you and I can now push that. And if anyone else wants to join us in using the survey, that's fine. If you're not going to do it and just complain 6 months later that nothing was used, that is on you, in my opinion.
Let me just look at
I,
the,
I think what's being,
I said my
hold on.
opinion. My
I-
opinion matters.
I
Just like
think-
that matters, the survey.
I think what's being expressed is we desired to have more discussions about the survey a little sooner, and that didn't occur. But I don't feel that that means we can't still have those discussions. And I think that's why it's being brought forth, is so we can.
Yeah, I'm not sure what discussions prior to right now going into budget season would have yielded. I just want to just pull up, I'm just looking at a sample question I just pulled up and trying to find one that was slightly relevant to something that can be discussed. This is a question. West Jordan provides several services to its residents. Rate each of the following services 0 to 100, meaning 0 meaning you're dissatisfied, 100 meaning you're completely satisfied. The lowest one on here is surface maintenance on city streets and roads, excluding highways maintained by UDOT. 55.85. So a little better than half were satisfied, or that's what the score is. What can we do about that if we discuss that in September versus now? It's a budget question. Where are we allocating money? We need more road funds. We need to go lobby the legislature, lobby Wasatch Front, go get our road funds, and then we can do something about them.
That's not necessarily true, because we can talk about which streets we're maintaining and all of those other kinds of things. And are we putting the money in the right priority for maintenance versus other projects? We can talk about that long before we get to a new budget season.
I think that's more of an administrative thing, though. We set the budget's there. Where they spend the budget that's on the streets department, that's on public works. I was wrong, though. There was one lower. Code enforcement was 54.35. And we just talked about that, so.
The sequencing, and I hear what you're saying, that the sequencing is according to Y2 Analytic that does professional surveys. This is the time to do the surveys. State law says we do the budgets. You get the budget from the mayor in May. You have to adopt it by the end of June. By the time the survey got compiled and we get it on the agenda was July. The intent was to have those July results used in the creation of this year's budget, which takes those things into account. You've also got the legislative session that just started now. There's a whole bunch of pieces that go into the creation of a survey and implementing those survey results. And that isn't something that's going to be done in 30 days. It's probably something that's more like 12 months. So the question again is, it's in the approved budget. The council with the current budget approved a continuation of the survey. The city would like to do the same survey, or at least the bulk of the questions, so that you can see if those numbers, if code enforcement goes higher or lower than 54.5. Now you've got a comparison. Is it decreasing? Is it increasing?
But to Kelvin's point, we didn't do anything about code enforcement.
Correct.
So a year over year change would just be it wouldn't be as a result of something that happened. It would just be a thing.
Well, and like I mentioned, this item has been on the agenda for several
But
months.
it does give us more data points, but
Yeah.
So can I ask real quick, and I'm gonna back up Kelvin on this. I want to see the survey. I want to talk about it, whether it's tonight or at a retreat or in another meeting, but he's got a good point. Do we need to make a decision on another survey tonight? Is that what you're asking? Because why don't we look at the survey first, see what it gives us, and then see if we need another survey?
Well, that's what we got in July, was we got the survey results, and that's hopefully.
I know, I'm just saying we don't need to make a decision on a second survey tonight, do we?
I need to know if you want to renew the contract with Y2.
When do you need to know if we need to renew it? Like tomorrow?
Next week.
To answer your question, yes, I'm in favor. I think we can utilize it even better now that we've gotten our hands wet with the first one, even though it was late. As far as your second question, not sure yet. I'd like to keep it pretty similar, like you said, so we compare results. And I would trust that if there's any pressing questions that we should ask, that we could ask that, but it doesn't have to be known tonight.
If I can clarify, doing the survey is the important question. We still have time because they won't do the survey probably till March is when they will start having the questions for approval. And we
Yeah,
would bring
that's-
that back to
figured
you
that.
just like we did last year,
Well,
the questions.
That's one reason why it didn't go out till July, is because you brought
Yes.
it back to us for questions and we can't agree on anything.
That is,
Well,
we
but
did
if
bring it back in March to get clarity on
If we bring it
questions.
back in March, the survey won't be done for the budget.
No,
Because
No, it
the
does.
budget, we get the budget in May.
right, but it'll be done for the next
It's
budget.
for next year's budget.
This one's for this budget.
The
So
survey
we're,
that
we're
was
gonna use data that's a year old for the budget. That's what you're saying. Is
Almost.
by the time that we use this survey, and we missed the opportunity last year because it came in late. But what we're saying then is we do a survey now so that we can use it a year from now to do the budget.
Yes, sir,
And-
that is
and
correct.
That doesn't seem like a good use of money to use data that's a year old to do budgets.
I think we're asking the wrong question, actually, because we budgeted this money in July for the budget, or in end of August, when we actually finally approved the budget. This has been budgeted, spend it, it's in your budget, go for it. I mean, it's like I'd tell any other department head. It's been budgeted.
But-
Now, do we want to talk about what questions need to be on it? That's another discussion.
Or do we want to discuss timing? Because if the concern is that we're using old information for the budget, do we want the survey to be closer to when we start working on the budget that we get the results?
Hold
Do
it a
we
few
want the
months.
results? Yeah, hold it a little
do
while
that-
before we put it out again.
To do that, we would need to start the budget in the fall. So that we have the results by January, February, so it can be used as the mayor's compiling the initial budget.
So then the question is, who is it for? Is it for us or is it for the mayor? If it's for the mayor,
City.
but you were just worried that it's ready for the mayor's budget, we can amend the mayor's budget any way we wish when
No,
it comes
it's a
to us.
city-
So,
It's a citywide survey.
yes, it is. But who is it for to use? Is it for the council to use?
For all of us to use.
It's for everybody to use. The mayor implements, the mayor's
Okay, so has
office-
the mayor been using the survey already?
You'll have to ask the mayor.
Okay,
But.
He's
but
saying
here A
yes.
few minutes ago.
so
didn't
then
you say-
then it's not old if
didn't you
he's
say
been
this
using
is
it
the time
since
of the
August.
year to do the survey, but now you want to do the survey in the spring.
No, you're putting words in my mouth.
What did
Mr.
I
Council.
miss?
Y2 Analytics says this time, springtime is the best time to do the survey. You had mentioned that you would like to change the timing so it can be used for the current budget. To do that, we would need to do the survey in the fall, which is not the optimum time to ask for a survey.
No, the current budget's next July. Why wouldn't we do the survey now and have the survey ready for July?
Well, because
for
by,
June.
by the time June comes
Okay,
around,
right.
the budget's halfway baked.
It's 3 months to do the survey. It's 3 months to mail out the postcards.
Okay, so that means the survey's done in March or April. Right? What am I guess I'm missing the timeframes here.
Okay,
So-
let me back up and I'll start and I'll be discreet. We assigned the contract with Y2 Analytics in January. We work with them as we're at the council office as the project manager for that. We work with Y2 Analytics to come up with the utility billing addresses, to design the postcards, to design the questions. We bring the questions back to the council about March. Once the council's okay with the questions, then they submit the surveys. They mail postcards to random sampling of residents. They go through the utility billing list to verify addresses of apartment dwellers, renters, and single-family home buyers, or single-family owners. They also work with census data to come up with male and female and the different demographics that are within the city. They collect and compile the data. It takes Y2 Analytics approximately 4 weeks to compile that data into a report, and then they present it to the city council. All of that process is about 5 months. So if we start now, it's
And-
May, and it was ready to be presented in June. And we scheduled it for July based on,
And why do we have to start in January? Why can't we start this process in September or October so that we do the survey starting at the tail end of February?
As I mentioned, Y2 Analytics says the best time to do the survey to get the most random results, to hit the sampling and the margin of error is this time.
Okay, so, but if we're starting all the Y2K in the questions, we're not doing the question this time of year. That's my question. Why don't we back it up and start so we can do the questions this time of the year? And we get the survey results in March or April. That's my question. You see where I'm going with that?
No, I don't.
Well, you said we have to start in January. Why couldn't we start this process in August or September, get the survey ready so they can launch it in March?
Sir, it was on it's been in PrimeGov plan since August and it kept getting bumped until today.
No, the discussion for this that's been PrimeGov for August was where are we gonna go from here? Not how we're gonna do the next year's survey. I would disagree, but that's okay.
That's fine.
I think the point he's making is if we launch in it early, we don't get the best response. So do we want, do we want them to come, do we want our responses to come at a better time for us, or do we want better answers? Those are the two things.
So if we start early, then we can do it in the springtime. What we're doing now is if we start now and we do all the questions and go back and forth, the survey's not gonna be done until April or May, and then we get the results in June or July. And so we're not getting the optimum time because we're not surveying people in the time where it's the most optimum. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think any of the results on the survey or any of the questions on the survey are that time sensitive.
They're not.
A year-old data is not gonna be that different, but watching year-over-year trends, I think is gonna be valuable.
Yeah, exactly. And we already have all the questions. We're not drastically changing anything. So it's going to be a lot easier and it's going to go a lot faster this year to get that survey out.
Yeah, I was looking over this questions just now and I don't see really anything that is specific to 2023 that would be different in 2024.
There is one question that we need to add, and that is that this is the final year where the council needs to determine out of the pilot program for ranked choice voting, and the council did ask that that be on the survey.
Oh, that would be good. Yes.
And you will have a discussion about ranked choice voting prior to August.
That's good. There's a bill about that on the Hill too. That might be going away for everybody.
Yep, it might end 2024.
Yeah.
So what I need tonight is that, do I have a consensus to continue doing the survey that's already budgeted?
We get a thumbs up if you want to do the survey that's already budgeted. Okay.
Okay, seeing six.
I do want to say one thing, and this is a good point. If we do another survey, how different are the results going to be? I mean,
That's the question.
That's the point of doing this, right? That's the point.
If we
no. I guess what I'm saying is, do we really think, okay, are we going to do the same questions? Because if we do the same exact survey again, they aren't going to be that much different. They won't be.
There's two types of questions. One question is the reporting question. So the city, both the council and the administration can see, just like code enforcement or streets, potholes. The mayor can only fill potholes that you fund. So are we doing better with potholes? Now, Mr. Clegg will tell you that asphalt since COVID, asphalt's gone up it's triple the price. So either there's more money that goes into fixing streets or we do a third less streets with the same amount of funds. So this is the baseline. The survey that's out right now is the baseline. This next survey will give you the delta, the change of where we're exceeding or where we're deficient. And then we can make changes in the budget. Then the mayor can make changes in how he's executing the programs that the council funds.
And are these going back to the same exact people, or is it going to be random again?
Y2 will randomize it. They're under contract to have a specific margin of error.
Yeah, I don't think you could nail the same people even if you wanted to.
Good. Yeah.
How many people is the survey going to?
Most of the whole
I'd have
city,
to,
right?
it's not the whole city. It's a select random list off of the utility billing and some census data. I'd have to get with Y2.
So how many responses did we
We
have?
had 928 responses.
Is that enough?
Yep.
Is that enough for a?
Yeah, margin
clean-
of error, I think. I'd have to look at the
3.2.
contract is, yes, the margin of error is 3.2%.
So that's pretty good, isn't it?
Yes, it's about 250 residents per district.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure it's in here. I don't know how many people were invited to take the survey, but there were 928 responses. I don't know if that was 5% response or if that was 20% response.
But the 928 responses was enough to get.
That's statistically significant.
It's
Yeah.
Statistically enough that
And it-
provide valid results.
And like I said, this presents, last year was the baseline because we hadn't done a survey before. This
Right.
will show the delta where there's
It'll show-
deficiencies
it'll
and
show
where
how we're
things have
doing,
improved.
right?
Right.
As, yeah, how are the programs working, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, and it will show a lot of good data, like average incomes is in here. What do you expect your 2023 family income to be? It'll be interesting before taxes. It'll be interesting to see if that's changed, if that's gone up, if that's gone down. Maybe we just hit a different sample. Who knows? It'll be interesting to see if the racial makeup of the city has changed, if the employment status of the city has changed. This is good information that we'll know, and we'll know what has happened over the last year, and we'll see how things have changed. So anyway, you got 6 in favor of proceeding, so
We'll renew the contract and I'll bring back probably March,
that
some
question and
the
talk about it.
questions to review.
And
That's
we
all I
should be
have.
thinking individually about questions we'd like to see answered. So we should be ready, prepared to answer back.
That's all I have, Chair and Council. Thank you for your time.
All right, that's the last item on the agenda except for administrative items, which we're not sure what that was. Did you remember what that was, Alan? As a placeholder. Okay, perfect. I know we had a conversation about throwing something under there, but apparently we didn't throw it under there, so, right? Obviously upcoming council meetings is on there. We'll see you next week. Oh, yeah, I hear Apollo Burger is still open, as is every other burger place. There was one night we went to In-N-Out Burger about 12:30. After a really late meeting. Anyway, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Oh, without any objection, I'll say we're adjourned.